Hello, welcome to the Green Room with me, David Green. It is the first Monday of the month, so we are back with another Green Room. And today is hi Anita, straight in there, and Nikki, how's it going? And today it's a bumper episode because not only is it the Green Room, we're going to be doing Basking in the Evergreen right after, where the winner of this show will be interviewed for an hour, and the runner-up will be interviewed for half an hour by our new interviewing guest, Nikki DeKeuster. So lots of things to go into tonight. I'm David Green, you know who I am, but with me is Angela Eureka Smith and Daniel Mayers. So welcome to the Green Room, both of you.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. I have a feeling, I can feel it in my beard. It's going to be a good one.
That's because it's a green marathon. Like, we're just going to keep going.
Keep going.
Back to back.
Just keep going until the early morn, as the Beastie Boys once said. We can keep doing it. So, Angela, why don't you go first? Why don't you introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Angela Rico Smith. I am an indie author, which kind of migrated into having a publishing company. I published Space and Time magazine, which has been around since 1966. I did not start it in 1966. I'm really happy to say, because that points out that I'm younger than the magazine by a little bit. But we published that, and we've published some other things like Tortured Willows, which was a Bram Stoker winner. And I would like to think, don't blast me if I am wrong, but I think that I might have been the first independent Bram Stoker finalist. And I can't remember, I think it was 2019, but it could be wrong, but I haven't found another one yet.
We're going to say that it's correct for the purposes of this show and for all the advertising that we do. That's the case.
I'm going to say David said it was correct. So
right, I checked. I researched it. Daniel, you go. Your turn.
All right, I'm Dan Myers. I'm an independent author as well. I am older than that magazine, and there's not a lot to tell. I live in Minnesota and wrote a book during COVID and have started the trilogy, and the second book comes out in July.
Excellent stuff. And you are allowed to mention the books that you have. That is fine.
I'm going to mention his book because I actually just bought it a couple days ago. So, and I am up to the part where the titular character shows up. Very sexy character. Maybe that's just me.
I thought you were going to give massive spoilers. Then it's like I wanted the bit where.
Yeah, I have a crush. It's the character seems kind of menacing, and so I'm like, definite crush. Okay. I also had a crush on Darth Vader, so you know.
Well, who doesn't?
Good, thank you.
Who doesn't? Exactly. Okay, well, moving swiftly on, we might as well go straight into the first topic. That was some excellent finger pressing from Joe there. He's straight in there as soon as I said it. So, topic one. I think that bad boys are the best. That is true. As we're going through the topics, as Nikki and Anita are already doing, please leave your comments and also tell us who you think is winning, and we'll get to your comments and we'll talk about them in between the topics. But first of all, I think let's go in alphabetical order. Angela, you get to go first.
Okay, my topic is my gripe topic is not seeing the benefits of book piracy. And I know I'm going to be the hated person here because that's like the hot topic. You know, my book was pirated and now I'm losing all this money. But there's another way to look at it too. I do have books pirated and I have not gone and requested them to be taken down because in my mind, it's free advertising. And there's studies that show that when your book is pirated, you benefit from increased exposure. The argument they're taking that the book piracies, and I'm not advocating go out and pirate books, but if your book happens to be pirated, it's not worth the stress of trying to get it taken down, in my opinion, because of the increased exposure. People who are going to pirate a book, it's not taking money away from you because, and this is studies have shown, those people would not buy your book anyways. A lot of times they are library readers, but when they love your book, they tell other people who might buy your book. They do give reviews and feedback. You can actually, if you're an indie author, you control what goes in your book. So you can put all the links to your website, you can put the links to your other books, free advertising. When books are taken by other countries and translated, so stolen into Spanish or another country, you are now opened up to a wider audience in another language, which I just cannot see the downside to that. A lot of times the pirate copies will be bad, like with typos and other issues and formatting issues, which if somebody starts reading it and they like it, then they are encouraged to go actually buy the book in the proper form. So you would make more money from this free advertising. Let's see, it increases your fan base, I'll say, because, bottom line, I write to be read. If I was writing for money, I would have quit a long time ago. Not that I don't like money, but that little 30 cents, the value of the exposure is more than just a dollar and cent sign. I get 30 cents for an ebook, but I might sell 10 books or get a movie deal in Spain because my book went over there. As well as it makes it easier for people to vote for you for literary awards and put you in there for literary awards, because people cannot put, like for a Stoker or for whatever, they can't put the book in there if they've never read it. And if they haven't purchased it, then they may not have been able to read it. But if they read it for free, then they might like it so much that and like A.F. Stewart says, fighting it is a what do you want to do? Fight piracy or write another book? I'm going to write another book and make sure my advertisements are in it. And I think that is the end of that. Was I supposed to go for 10 minutes?
No.
Okay, yeah. I think I saw something about that. I was like, I don't think I can do this for 10 minutes.
No, you don't have to go for 10 minutes. No, each kind of section goes 10 minutes. Interesting one. So we have had someone arguing to put piracy in the green room. Can't quite remember if that one actually went in or not. We are thinking of doing like a little kind of ticker tape of like what's in there at some point.
That would be super handy.
People are coming to my house and go, "Why have you got this written on your wall for?" Like, well, this is the things that I hate. So yeah, this is an interesting one, an interesting argument. If you're going to steal my work, then at least leave me a review and tell other people that you like it. I mean, it seems fair to me that they can at least do that kind of thing.
Yeah, nominate me for an award, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. We
give away books all the time for free for that reason. So.
Right, exactly. And you made an interesting point there as well about about a couple of interesting points. The exposure side of it. Generally the most pirated movies are the ones that make the most money at the box office as well.
Yeah, and there are studies that show piracy is actually good for us, although that still seems a bit of a twist.
Yeah, because of word of mouth, I think. But the other thing that you said that was interesting as well was the type of people that are going to pirate stuff aren't going to buy things in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. And I kind of think that the same way a little bit about ARC readers and people that want to be on ARC lists. They're not going to buy the book really, unless they absolutely love your stuff and they might buy like a paperback version or a signed copy or whatever. But they're probably not going to buy the ebook. So you might as well just give it to them to get the review and get the word of mouth and everything. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Dan, what do you think about this one?
I would just be excited somebody thought well enough of my book to pirate it.
Also a good point.
Like Angela, I'm not in this for the money. This is kind of a goal or an ambition or passion of mine. And I spend far more money than I'll ever make on these books. So yeah, I wouldn't bother going after them either. I can see that. I mean, I don't know the benefits. The only issue I would have with piracy, if they substantially changed something or just made it in such a format that it was, embarrassing and distributed. When I think of piracy, I don't think of actually like somebody just stealing a free copy. I think of them like regenerating the book and selling it somewhere else. But yeah, I wouldn't care either. I think she makes a very strong point.
Well, there we go. We'll have to see. People that are watching, please let us know what you think of it. And after this topic, after Dan's turn, we'll go through the comments and see what you all think. So get your comments going in. Very interesting one. I didn't actually think we would have someone arguing for parity in the green room, but you made some good points. But now, Dan, it is your turn.
Well, so all my pet peeves, or whatever we want to call them, come from my experiences with dealing with getting published. And so the first one is all the people telling you to write to market and do your research and find out what stories are hot and then just, redo that story. And the first time I was told that, I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. But again and again and again, and then you start to wonder, it's like, well, maybe that's what I should be doing because I'm not getting a lot of traction on my book. But I don't want to tell somebody else's story. I want to tell my story, and I want to tell it my way. So I think if you are in this just to make money and your goal is to be a profitable writer, then I think that's a good idea. But if you're, this is a passion of yours and this is something that you want to do to express yourself and express your artistic form, then I just don't think writing to market is the way to go. And that's all I got for you.
Very good. Very short but sweet and to the point.
I tend to be concise. Sorry.
Concise. That's good. I think. So let me ask you this: can you? I think writing to market is definitely a thing that happens. I can think of some examples off the top of my head from that I see sometimes. Can you, as a reader, do you feel like you can sometimes pick up on things where it's kind of like this has been done to hit a very, very specific?
Yeah, pardon me. Yes, so that's one of my pet peeves when I'm reading books. When I read a book that is almost exactly another story or another book, and it's like names and faces have been changed. And I see it more in like television than I do necessarily books, just because I don't read a tremendous amount. But even television shows, you see television shows, and if you watch a doctor show, you'll see the same illnesses and the same plot lines, and you see a detective show and you see the same stuff over and over and over again. And it's just like, I just feel like, think of something new, because I used to be amazed that my dad could watch 5 minutes of a show and tell you who did it. And I realized now that's just because he had watched so many shows, right, detective shows, that he had seen all the plot lines. And sure, it was very clear, and it becomes very clear very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is about when people kind of write to what they think is popular, is that the next popular thing is going to come around the corner pretty quickly, and it'll be something that's, it might be something that's been popular before and is popular again, or it might be something very new, like cozy fantasy became quite big towards the end of COVID, and there's a lot of people kind of doing cozy fantasy now, but it's probably going to go away again very, very soon, and it'll be the next thing will be around the corner. Angela, what do you think?
Military fantasy.
Military fantasy back again.
So you just started a whole genre, cozy military.
Cozy military. I could see that. Like World War I style, like officers and the Batmen kind of wearing the slippers. Yeah. Having a cup of tea.
Actually, we're fighting the good fight. Never mind all the other stuff.
Right, let's do it. Do it. So, what do you think, Angela, about this one?
I agree with what Daniel's saying. I mean, there is writing to be marketable, but if you're writing because you saw something like, vampires are in, you always hear this kind of stuff. By the time you've heard about it, everybody's already done it. So don't I feel like, I mean, maybe do your own take on it. But I think ultimately, because writing is a creative thing, we have to really write what we are interested in and who we are. So, and for me, that is maybe vampires, because, how many times am I going to say sexy? All right, everybody take a shot by the time I say the word sexy. But yeah, vampires are kind of, a little bit hot. As tropey and tired as that is, I'm just going to be out there. Yes, my sheets are black and red. But, I don't really want to write a vampire story because there's a billion of them, so I agree with what Daniel's saying.
There we go.
Well, I mean, I might write one if I get the right idea.
You might write one at some point. Yeah, that's the thing. I like tropes. They're good. There's some tropes that I don't like, but ones that I think are problematic. But other than that, I generally like tropes, and we like tropes for a reason. So you're both very polite as well. You both agree with each other. This is very nice. So that's the end of topic 1. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the comments and see what everyone else thinks. But please let us know who you think is the winner of that round as well. Not you two, because you both think that you won, but the people in the comments.
What? And we're being nice. So, Daniel, I think you won. Daniel, you were awesome.
Angela likes the fictional bad boys. I don't think that's even up for debate, is it? Fighting piracy is like whack-a-mole. It is. Yes, this is a good point. That is a definite exit effort. Yeah, because Amazon just decided that we're going to punish the person that wrote this book.
That is true, and that does put an entirely different spin on it.
Yeah. That's just Amazon being weird, though. Hopefully they'll kind of be have some common sense. Yeah. Putting a book free in book 4. Yeah, it goes out there. Such a healthy take. It was.
Life is too short to stress out about stuff.
It really is.
Right.
You learn that as you get older.
Nikki does have experience fighting actual real pirates. It's true. In Wisconsin.
Yeah, when we do say real pirates, I do mean fictional real pirates. I don't think I'd really want to meet a real pirate. Right.
This is actually a really good point as well, because a lot of them they kind of skim the best-selling charts. So if someone has a really kind of obscure book that they've just done a massive promotion on, and they've put loads of money advertising, it goes up to the top of the charts. It appears in all the pirate things because they're all this book is popular.
Yeah. That's when you publish your book and 5 minutes after you hit publish, somebody's selling a paperback copy for $100.
Yeah, that's always fun. Right to market, just kill. Yes. Real movie pirates are sexy. Well, that was you breaking the fourth wall with a different name. You're trying to trick us. The template method. Yeah, template method. Cozy military. Yeah, I think it's definitely the thing. So Angela thinks that Daniel has won this round. We will see. Also, I think capable of having sense. This is true. This is true. Pirates on Lake Michigan. Okay, so this is true as well. Yeah. So that is what we think at the moment. I will not say what I think, but what I will say is that they were both excellent topics, very thought-provoking, and now it's round time for topic number 2. And because you went second last time, Dan, you get to go first. So,
okay. So this is, I was almost guilty of this, but authors not using editors, indie authors specifically. I've just gone through it. There's 3 books in particular I started to read and just could not get through them, and all 3 of them were from people I had, met online and Facebook and stuff, and, trying to support other indie authors. And just, I'm an accountant, so I'm not a grammar police by any means. But when you're every page, there's a double the, or words that are out of order, or a sentence that's repeated, or something, just basic stuff. It I can't read it. And another book I had, they spent like 10 pages describing somebody walking through this hall. I mean, they're describing the floor tile, they're describing the clock, the chandeliers, the stained glass windows, the pattern of the wallpaper. I was just like, any editor would have said, cut that. Even me, not an editor, would have said, cut that, or at least trim it down or break it up and put it in different parts of the book or something. But it was, as I said, I went through 40 pages and they had just had the initial, initiating event for the book. And that's just too long. And as I said, I've had 3 books in the last year that I've started and just put away, and I can't finish because of that. So that's one of my, I guess, pet peeves is not using editors. And just when I got my first book back from the editor, I went through their comments and I was like, oh, they don't understand what I'm trying to do here. And I set it down for a week and went back and looked at the comments, and I get the whole, I have my vision and I want to give my vision, but you have to have, other people looking at it and reading it and giving you unbiased feedback. And then you need to think about that feedback and really take it to heart and work on it. And if you're not doing that, I don't feel like you're serious about putting out a good product.
Interesting. Very good. I think one of the main things that I kind of, and I've come across this as well, especially when I used to do a lot of short stories before I started working on novels and what have you, is that there is sometimes a perception from people that editors are just there to fix punctuation and spelling and grammar, and it's like, no, that is not what they're there to do, right? It's as you were saying, they're there to develop the story and develop characters and look for plot holes and look for pacing and flow and other things like that. It's not about changing your story. It's about pulling the best version of the story out from what you've written. And there is this kind of thing where, from my experience, where people are like, well, you're just there to just make sure my spellings are correct and all my commas are in the right place. And that just blows my mind whenever I hear people say it. And I do hear people say it, and it's crazy. And so I'm glad you brought it up. But I'm sorry that you had 3 books recently that had this kind of, how do you feel that looks, being an indie writer yourself? And obviously it's kind of strange that indie writers are kind of almost held to a higher regard in terms of what mistakes are allowed in the books, because it happens in traditionally published books as well. But as an indie writer, when you kind of see books that are in that kind of shape, how do you feel that kind of looks for other indie writers and the whole kind of indie writing, market?
So that's one of the problems I have with it is I just don't feel like they're taking it seriously. And I think that anybody who takes a chance on an indie writer, they're on Amazon or whatever, and they see this book that doesn't have a traditional publisher and they say, oh, well, I'm going to give it a try. And they get one of those, they're not going to try another indie writer, right? They're going to be like, yep, this is how all indie writers are. This is why I don't read indie writers. And I, again, as an accountant, never got above a C in English. I'm not a big guy on grammar and spelling. I read over a lot of spelling mistakes and stuff like that because my mind fills them in and I just miss them. But when you slap me in the face with them over and over and over, it starts to distract me from, getting into the story and getting lost in the tale that you're telling.
Yeah,
and I think it does reflect poorly on everybody.
Yeah, and especially when the pacing and the flow is not where it should be as well. I mean, that's one of the main reasons to read, is to get lost in a story. And
I've been accused of that. So.
Right. Well, you know, some people's not enough description is some people's too much. So it's like, you know, you're never gonna please everyone. But Angela, what do you think about this one? Would it be something that, have you seen this issue yourself?
I have, and I actually, you brought up a good point, David, that I hadn't really thought about, is why are we held to a higher standard as indies? So if you go to a craft fair and somebody has sewn a dress and maybe the seams are a little bit crooked or something, you're like, oh, it's handcrafted. Look, you know, it's so authentic and wholesome or whatever. But an author, oh my gosh, you know, if Simon and Schuster has a typo, well, that's because it just happens. But if we do, then, you know, besides the fact that we're closer to our readers, I think, so we get all the messages, it is like well, you're just not very professional.
Right.
But yeah, editing is incredibly important. So I'm going to like agree with Daniel again. So officially I'm like, no, you're wrong, Daniel. But you know, I actually do agree. As an editor, you know, they always tell you you can't edit your own stuff. And I keep trying, and this is absolutely true. Like, I agree with everybody. Do not edit your own stuff, even if you are an editor, because obviously we're making the mistakes because we don't know that it's a mistake. Like, who intentionally puts a mistake in, you know, unless it's poetry.
Yeah, and we're too close to the story as well. Like, you know, so it all makes perfect sense to us because it's in our heads and we're like, well, this is happening because of this and this and this. And it's like, it takes someone else to go, well, this isn't clear to people that are not inside your mind. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yes, we need to remember that. So, yes, good topic. Please, everyone who's watching, let us know in the comments what you thought of that one as well. And we're going to go with Angela as she talks about her next one.
Okay, well, I know I just talked about the benefits of piracy, but now I'm going to talk about why it's okay for us to make a buck. And my gripe, if you wanted to spill it out as to what the gripe actually is people who act like when you make money as an author or an artist in general, that somehow this is tainted, that we shouldn't get paid because we are doing it for the love of doing it. So we kind of wind up being in a little bit of a double damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situation, because on one hand, yes, pirate my book, read it. That's why I'm writing it, is so you can read it, not the 30 cents. But on the other hand, why is it wrong for me to be happy that I got paid a royalty? Why is this terrible? And so I have a little tiny story. I will not digress too long, especially now that I know I don't have to do this for 10 minutes. But I did have a friend in Florida. And Florida, I found it very hard to actually make money as a writer. And I don't know if it's because I started in that town. So people are always kind of like, oh, well, I knew you before you were, because I worked for the newspaper. And then I started writing fiction. And so I don't know if it was that, like, oh, well, you're really this. And so I'm discounting your fiction. But long story short, everybody wanted all the books for free, no matter what. And so I moved to Kansas City at some point, and then people were actually buying books. It's like a way different mindset. You know, people were actually like, oh, you're an author? So again, I don't know if that's the area or people didn't know me there, but it was really gratifying. And so then I had a friend visit from Florida, and I was actually in the middle of saying, they said, like, how do you like Kansas City as a writer? And I said, it's awesome. People will actually pay for your work here. Like, it's valued. And then they turned around and said, I mean, not even a breath, oh yeah, speaking of you writing these books, my friend was hoping, because it traveled together, my friend was hoping that they could get a signed copy, but like for free. And it was just like that thing of like, well, if I say no, it's not free, then I'm being a biatch. You know what I mean? So I do want you to read it. And if you don't have the money to buy it, by all means, I will show you maybe a pirate site. I actually don't know any, but, you know, I will send you the PDF for free or the EPUB or whatever, because I do want to be written. But also don't malign us and you know, we're not discredited as artists because we do want to make money, because we do follow a trope that may be popular, or we, you know, sell out and, you know, go appear on such and such, whatever. You know, I'm making up names now because I can't think of anything specific. But that thing that you would say is selling out, you know, so what if we do that and we make a buck? Because here's the thing, if your mechanic loves fixing cars and, you know, they come up and they're like, yeah, I just love fixing cars, and they give you a $300 bill, you don't go, but you love it so much. Why is this not free? It's the same for us. And so that's my gripe, acting like making a buck at this job is somehow wrong. So yeah, I'm a politician right now because I'm like, give it away for free. Don't complain if you make $1.
Well, that it's reminding me very much of the speculate to accumulate model.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you're following. Yeah.
Oh, I have dogs, by the way.
That's okay. We're a dog friendly show. I kind of feel like, I was talking to someone about this recently, about like how, I mean, I have a book coming out next week, and it's part of the series, so I'm going to be doing like a big sale on it, and it's like, to get people to buy the third book in the series, I'm going to be putting the other books in the series as cheap as possible. One of them even being free to kind of get people in, right? And then altogether, to get 4 books, it's going to cost like $3.99, which is about the price of a Starbucks, probably less than a Starbucks, I guess. I'm not really too sure, but it's probably around that price. And I was like, this is going to be like 450,000 words of what I've been writing for the last few years. Right, and a lot of hours, and it's people have gone in and edited it, and I've had beta readers and alpha readers and this and this and this. Or you can just go and buy a coffee and be done with it in 30 minutes, right? But then if we were to say, well, actually, we're going to put our price up of this thing to like $4.99, people would really complain about it or not buy it. But then if the coffee went up by 50 cents, people are like, oh well, I need my coffee.
Yeah, coffee beans are expensive.
Right. But when we were all in lockdown, we couldn't leave our houses. What was the thing that was keeping us sane? It wasn't going to Starbucks and getting a coffee. It was books and movies and music and all this kind of stuff that we think we should be getting for cheaper than what it's worth. And you're right that people do spend an awful lot of time creating stuff, and it is a profession. What do you say to people when have you given a lot of free signed books away to people?
Yes, so many. So I may preach that, but I don't necessarily practice that.
Yeah, that's good. What do you think about this one? Obviously, because Daniel, this does touch a little bit on yours in some points in terms of not writing for market, but it is a profession, and we should be making money, shouldn't we?
Ideally. And my wife complains all the time because I give away books at the drop of a hat. And again, this is a passion of mine. So anybody who I know, I'm happy to give them a book. I just don't know that many people, so I don't end up giving away too many books. But I totally agree with Angela on this, because I think if people know you, especially, they just think that, oh, well, they know me and it doesn't cost them anything really. It's, not understanding that, my hardcover costs $13 to print, costs about $3 a copy for me to get it shipped to me. And then, okay, so $15, $16 to give it to you. And
not counting.
Okay, I don't mind doing it. It's not my source of income, but just I don't want to say gall, but just this presumption that, you can just give me your product for free. To your point is you wouldn't, if I owned a coffee shop and one of my friends came in, I'd expect them to pay me the $3 for the coffee, right?
Right. Even though the coffee has probably cost about 20 cents to make.
Yeah, so there's the next thing. They should give us free coffee. What? It's so cheap for them.
Yeah, it's like, come on, you're not gonna miss it. You're not gonna miss it. All right. Great stuff. So before we go on to the next topic, we'll go through the comments, but please let us know how you thought that one went down. So yeah, editors are essential. Yes, there's a lot of editors that watch Go Indie now that get and coming out, and so is Nikki as well. Pirate editors, take the book, edit it.
Oh, that's awesome.
High quality pirating. Yes, development editing is essential. This is, yeah. Story bullying. What is story bullying? You have to tell us what that is.
Yes, Anita does bring up a good point there. You should edit your stuff before you send it out to editors as
Your
well.
best of your ability. Yeah.
I'm definitely not saying just send out your unedited. Bleh.
Right. Yes. There you go. Anita is well on your side there. It's problem in all creative endeavors. The mechanic point is excellent. Yeah. The library. Yep. Libraries are good. We're getting a lot of indies in there at the minute as well. Yeah, that is true. I kind of think that with the expensive one though is if you've got like a bit of a name already, it's a lot easier to kind of well, this is going to be a little bit more than this one, you know. Yeah, request me around. There you go. You're breaking the fourth wall all over the place.
Sorry.
Angela takes that one. Both great topics. Getting paid is my pick. Fair enough. I can't argue with that one. But we are about to head into the final topic where.
Okay, now's when the blood comes out, Daniel.
Right. This was where dreams can be made.
I got my knives. Darn it.
Yes.
I do have a sword here somewhere.
And while my contestants are talking about their topics, please keep on commenting. We will get to them and let us know how you think the topics are going down. But to start off, the third and final round is Angela.
Yay. All right. Well, my third gripe is people who think that we are going to be replaced by AI. Now, at this moment. And I'm not going to say for the future, I cannot guarantee that we will not be replaced. But for right now, I did a lot of research recently into AI. And I think fearing AI is like fearing the Gutenberg press. When the Gutenberg press came out, if you go back in history and look, there's a lot of people like, oh, this is the end of the industry. And by industry, they meant the people that had to sit in the sweatshops and write books by hand forever. And books were therefore like knowledge was not freely given. There couldn't be libraries because books were far too valuable because they were each handcrafted. Gutenberg press made that broke that open so that everybody could have books. And I feel like that's where AI is going. Like I said, AI is not going to replace us because it doesn't have that creative element. And so some of the things that I did was ask AI, can you write me a story about this thing? Can you write me a poem about this? You know, and it can be perfect, as in a sonnet will be a sonnet, but the rhymes are dull and clumsy. People are like upset in magazines, especially as a publisher. This is like a big deal to us, getting the AI submissions. None of those are going to pass. These are the most boring, vanilla stories ever. Well written, yes, but there's no spark of creativity. So that's why we don't have to worry about being replaced by AI. But I strongly think that we should work with AI. And I have been working with AI a lot recently, probably for like the past 2 months. And it is so valuable for so many reasons. One is editing and proofreading. You can put your text in there and you can ask AI to let you know where redundancies are, let you know where it needs to be tightened up, spelling. It doesn't actually replace editing though. So please don't think you can just pop something in AI, because after I get that out, I will find editing problems with that piece. But what it is good for is kind of like having like a proofer, like somebody who gives you that feedback on your story, but at your beck and command at 3 a.m. when your friends have all disowned you for asking them to please read something because you have to submit it the next day. So that's why AI is good. It's also good for generating ideas, I found, where I'm kind of like stuck, especially when it's like, I've done the blog post, I've did all the things, and now I just need to write like that little intro in, say, the social media to talk about the blog post that I just wrote. And my brain is dust. I cannot think of this. And for some reason, it's also 3 a.m. again. So I will paste my piece in, like what I just wrote about, and ask AI, can you write an introduction for, say, YouTube about this? Can you write a meta description for a WordPress post that with this text? And it'll do it. And then I'll wind up correcting it. Like, well, that's exclamation points, AI. Why are there so many exclamation points in AI? But, so I'll take all the exclamation points out and things like that, and I will make it a little less cheerleadery, because AI is very cheerleadery, which is like maybe a thing. It's being too nice to us. But, you tone it down, and then it just helps a lot to kind of get like the grunt work tasks out. I use it a lot for research now, especially like writing a story, and I'll be like, hey, I wonder if, what was the reception for the Gutenberg press like when it first came out? I want to use that in my story. So I can ask, say, ChatGPT, which saves me from going down the rabbit trail where at 3 a.m, again, I will wind up looking for like aliens on Mars. Here's the proof. And there's never any proof. That's clickbait. I have learned this lesson now. AI can translate your stuff, though. Again, I'm going to say get a translator. It's also really good for marketing ideas, surprisingly, because it combs the web. I mean, it doesn't, because ChatGPT is like, 2021, I think. So it can't really comb the web, but it can take all the information about algorithms and stuff. So I do that a lot too. Like, what are the SEO keywords for this piece? Because I'm terrible at that. What would be a good title for this? Blah, blah, blah. What are some of the questions that people ask? So when I'm like generating blog posts, what are the top 10 questions that writers want to know? Like the questions that they have. There's all the answers. So I'm going to say being against AI is a gripe. It's not going to replace us because it just can't. I'm not going to say forever, like we're safe forever. But even then, I think it's going to be fine, because like a painting, we can all have a print of the Mona Lisa, but how much more will we want the actual Mona Lisa? It still holds its value. So that is my gripe. And now I'm reading comments, and they're funny.
Yes, here we go. I sometimes wish that AI would replace me, to be honest with you. I think just an AI version of me just doing all the same things, so I could just go and
I would love that.
enjoy my life. Wouldn't that be great? I'd love to be cloned or something. It'd be fantastic. I kind of find the hysteria. There's a bit of hysteria about it, about like, this is the end. Because like you said, if you read anything creative that an AI has tried to write, it's not very good.
Very bland.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like filler words, and there's a lot of like very, very basic stories. There's nothing really twisty about it. It doesn't seem to, and also as well, everyone acts in a very kind of perfect way, which is
with exclamation points.
With exclamation points. So yeah, I kind of I think there's some good points there about working with it as a tool and using it as a tool as well. I mean, I do have some conflicting thoughts about it. Like, I don't like AI covers, but replacing, but people are using them instead of actually using artists.
Yeah, it cannot replace us, the creative peoples behind this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What do you think about this one, Dan? Are you afraid that you're
smarter than me? But no, I can't dispute any of her points as far as AI goes. I don't use it. I don't do anything with it. My only concern with AI is within any tool is you have people who know how to use it and will do it as Angela's doing it. And then you'll have people like me who'll be like, oh, I can just kick out a story and, publish it. And hey, great, I've got another published book. And that would be my only concern is just somebody who can just kick it out and doesn't care and throws it out there, and they can just kick out volume of stuff that again dilutes the rest of our work, right? It's I think everything everybody in the indie world does reflects a little bit on everybody else. So I love it when I read great books by indie authors. I basically only buy indie authors now, and I'm disappointed when I find something that's lousy. But as far as using it for the tool, I don't use it. I don't know anything about it. I think what Angela described is makes it a very strong thing. And I will say, from an economic standpoint, there's never been an and advancement in history that has cost jobs, right? Nothing has ever put people out of work. It moves where the work is done, but it almost always leads to a growth in employment and a growth in opportunities. So I agree. The people freaking out about it is probably a little misspent.
I think as well, just before we move on to your topic, Dan, is that with a lot of creative stuff, is that it's not just the work that people kind of become fans of, it's the people that make it, and they want to know about the people that make it, and they want to know about, you know, what have they got going on in their lives, and like what's the background, and what other things are they interested in. And obviously, if everything was being written by AI, it takes away that whole side of it. Because, you know, you look at someone like Brandon Sanderson or Stephen King or someone like that, people are invested in them as well as their work, you know, and so that's never going to go away. There's always going to be like that kind of cult of personality and all that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. And there's a little discussion going on about it in the comments as well, which we'll get to. But first, and for the last topic of the night, take it away, Dan.
All right, my last topic is damsels in distress. And I really haven't seen this a lot lately, too much, but I've never liked this trope. I've never, you know, most shows that you watch, somebody will go through great efforts to kidnap, you know, the princess or, you know, whoever it is, and lose a bunch of people. And then the people go and get her lose a bunch of people to get them back. And it doesn't have to be, you know, male, female, whatever. I always thought that trope was silly, that why would you go risk everything and, you know, take your army and march it off for one person. It's just a pet peeve of mine. You wanted a pet peeve. It's not real strong, but that's it.
Damsel. Oh, a dog, an Egyptian dog has appeared. Anubis has appeared out of nowhere. Damsel in distress. Yeah, you know, the thing is with damsel in distress trope as well, there it kind of it leads into a lot of, I mean, I think times have moved on from, or should have moved on from damsel in distress. I think it's, you know, it's had its day and it's very old hat now. But it kind of, from that, it leads off to quite a lot of very problematic tropes as well. You know, like Phrygian, for example, was one that is like very, very hand in hand with damsel in distress and some other things like that. And it's always kind of it's kind of alarming when you see people still using that kind of thing. Have you seen anything? Have you read or watched anything recently that had that trope in it?
Yeah, the Willow series, you know, was the last one I saw. It was the prince, but I mean this. They send this, you know, team in to kidnap them. One of them dies, and then, you know, kill a bunch of the guards. And then the whole rest of the show is them going to get the guy back, and they lose a bunch of guys. And now there's a little bit of a twist on that, in that they wanted him for his blood because he is descended from Bavmorda, the big bad, you know, thing. So there was that kind of almost made it tolerable, but I was still like, why would you risk all those people to kidnap him in the first place? And then why does the king risk everything to get him back? So
yeah. And you know, I mean, I can understand wanting people's blood. I mean, that's fair enough.
Yeah, I was going to say, that makes sense.
I've not watched the Willow TV series. Yeah, I've not watched the Willow TV series yet, and I just read that it's been cancelled as well. So,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to spoil it for you.
Well, it's fine. It's okay. What do you, Angela? What do you think about the damsel in distress trope?
So I agree with Daniel. I especially like that you brought up that it's damaging, because it is very damaging. I mean, when we think of female or male, I don't think it really, but when you portray somebody as, like, say, like the Sleeping Beauty, I probably am going to list females because it does seem to be more common. But like Sleeping Beauty, literally she's just a victim. And that's what that whole damsel in distress trope puts out. And I don't know. I mean, I guess there are victims, like we have those in real life, people that are just victims, but it's like saying you just are that. Like Snow White didn't have a choice. She just was victimized. I don't know why I'm going to fairy tales here, but, even in like Twilight, I can't remember the lead's name or the girl.
Bella.
I
don't know why I know this. I don't know why I know it, but I do.
Well, I actually know it intimately because someone admitted out loud. No, but I'm not like super familiar with that story, but like I watched part of the movie because my daughter went through like a Twilight stage, and I was just like, oh my God, she's such a freaking victim. Like, come on, like you can also kill people. I mean, it's equal opportunity death now. Like women can kill as much as men. We don't have to be victims, but also like it does go the opposite way where men are also the damsel. I guess that would be the damser, or there probably is a word for that.
There probably is. I don't know what it is either.
Yeah. I think people kind of like don't mind it as much because it's kind of like people are like, oh, this is funny, but also that's kind of says a lot more about like male victimization as well, where people are like, it's fine.
Yeah, it was a guy, he liked it.
Yeah. So that's a whole different kind of words. That's for the next show. So yeah, well, both excellent points. We're going to go and look at the comments now, and while we're looking at the comments, please let us know who you think as well. And hello, Vanessa, welcome to the show. Both have great topic twos. They did. I'm glad that I am. No, I'm not glad I'm the one else makes a choice. AI is nice, keeping its enemies close. Yeah, that's the thing with AI. You can never really trust it, can you? I've seen enough sci-fi films to know that.
Yeah. We all know and that's actually why I support AI, because I know how this works, really.
Exactly.
I love AI.
Yes, it's listening to us right now. It's always like, when you've got like you tell like your Alexa or something to switch off and not listen, and then it's like it goes, okay, not listening, and it's like, how did you?
Yeah, well, and you see the light go on, like, so you're like, you're not listening, but why are you still there?
Book descriptions and promos. I know a few people. I think some publishers that are using AI to do blurbs at the moment.
Yeah, send them my way. I'd like to learn how to do that.
Right. How would you know the given is right? That is a good point.
Yeah, you don't. You always have to research, edit. It is not an easy fix.
Oh, there we are. There's paint analogy is a great one, Angela. There you go. AI art is very, very hit and miss. Yeah. And it can be a fun inspiration to a story if you're looking for a vibe, but I wouldn't use it for a cover. Yeah, I don't like people using them for covers either. I think it's just.
Yeah. What I have been using it for lately is putting a verse of poetry in there and letting it illustrate that, just for a fun thing. And so that's what I'm doing on Instagram. So it's fun to play with. It's fun for the inspiration, but it would make a terrible cover.
Yeah, I think it's fine for people using it for like personal promo and stuff like that, and for graphics and all that kind of stuff. But like, when it goes to like, if you would usually pay an artist to do the cover, and AI generated stock on photo sites without being tagged as such. I think Tor got in trouble with this for Christopher Paolini's new book recently. They used AI created stock image and didn't realize.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Nikki's giving you a bit of heat here, Dan. Somebody has to be. That is very true. And you can't stalk AI, but AI can stalk you.
Yeah, that makes us all damsels in distresses a little bit, because of AI. Can always find us.
It's making us all into the troop.
Yeah.
Self-rescuing princesses. Yeah. That is a fun trope, actually. Yeah, there's always a really bad villain when the damsel in distress. Yeah, they're both good ones. I'm gonna message Joe, and Joe is gonna decide who's won this one. I'm gonna do it.
This is actually one reason why I like A.F. Stewart's books, is because she doesn't really have distressed damsels, but there are many damsels.
Right. Yes.
And a little bit stabby and bitey sometimes.
they do like to stab.
Everybody says that about her, but every time I've interacted her, she is the sweetest person.
She's very nice.
She is, but if she I love her. I've known her for quite a while now, but sometimes I think, would I spend the night at A.F. Stewart's house? And I mean that as a compliment.
She's very nice. She gets all of her murder out in a book.
Very sweet. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So now while I decide on who has won this episode of the Green Room, we're going to take a quick ad break, and I am going to furiously decide who.
Oh yeah, and you're sending me your PayPal information, right, David?
Yes. Yeah.
Writers are a creative bunch. Unfortunately, they don't always have the time to work on their craft. That's why Frank rented a cabin in the woods for a night. He hoped the isolated and time alone would allow him a chance to get some writing done. But he kept getting interrupted by a series of bizarre interactions. First, his father. Then, his wife. Before he knew what was happening, Frank was stuck in a fight for his life as his insecurities and anxieties began attacking him from every angle. What Frank hoped would be a quiet time alone quickly turned into a nightmare. One in which Cabin 818 would never allow him to escape from.
Another excellent advert there, and that is part of the prize of winning the Green Room, is that you do get to have ads running, created by Joe Crompton himself, and they're excellent. So anyway, here is my least favorite part of the show, is when I have to decide who the winner is. So going from top to bottom. Topic 1. Right to market versus not seeing the benefits of piracy. Like both of these ones, I could see the points on them both as well. I did think there was a few drawbacks on the piracy, though, particularly the Amazon one, and the right to market stuff. I ghost write, which is right into market, and it is hellish. So sometimes, Dan got the point on that one. So that was on round 1. Round 2, authors not use editors versus it's okay to make money. Again, both excellent points. It is okay to make money. That's what, we should be rewarded for our money. But also, not using editors is a terrible look for everyone. However, I do think that those people, if they don't want to use editors and they don't go through the process properly when they should, then I think that is sometimes largely their own problem. So I think on this one, I was going to go with Angela, that it is okay to make money. So that is 1-1 going into the last one, and the damsel in distress trope versus going to be replaced by AI. It's a tough one because the damsel in distress trope is one of my least favorite, and frigid in particular that comes from that is something that I really dislike to see. But I also am very, very tired of seeing articles about why we're all going to be replaced by AI. And I think it's good to kind of educate people on it in terms of how we can work with it. So in the last one, I am going to go with Angela. So the winner is, in this episode, is Angela. Congratulations. She's not.
Sorry, I was off in the comments, breaking that third wall, or fourth wall.
It was very close. It was very, very close. Congratulations. I hope you feel elated. I hope Dan.
Daniel was really tough though, because I agreed with every single thing. I mean,
Me too.
You're wrong about all those points that I agree with, Daniel. Rah.
Right, but
I think we all have the same kind of gripes. So
we do. Sometimes we do. But coming up straight away after this little break is Basking in the Evergreen, where I will be talking to Angela for the next hour. And Dan has I don't even think it's much of a runners-up prize, really, of talking to Nikki for a while as well, which is a lovely thing to do.
I won.
So,
that sounds like there's really no downside to this.
Look, you can both talk to her if you want to. It's fine. Okay, thanks everyone for watching today. Thank you for taking part, and stay there. We'll be right back. But it's always time to go indie now.
Now it is time to turn it over to the magnificent David Green as he talks about Empire of Ruin, the series, which I have to admit, these books are amazing and addictive. And he also just sent me the cover to share with you guys.
Oh,
so beyond
that is gorgeous.
I
so
am
great.
one of the few that have got an art copy of this book, and let me tell you guys, it's full of action and magic. But without further ado, David, take it away.
Hello, I'm David Green, the magnificent David Green. It makes me sound like I run a circus or something, which I would love to do. So thanks very much. And I'm not going to talk about much of it. I'm just going to read a little bit from the upcoming book, which is out on ebook on April the 11th. We're going to be doing quite a big campaign for it with the previous books in the series as well. But it's also going to be launching. The paperback is going to be launching earlier at EasterCon, which is a convention that's on over Easter in the UK in Birmingham. So if you are there, I will be there, and the paperback will be launching as well. So basically, a little bit about it. I'm a big Wheel of Time fan, a big Lord of the Rings fan. There's all that kind of a big Jar Abercrombie fan. There's all that kind of influences in there as well. But also there's stuff like Dragon Age Origins, the video game, which was a huge influence on this series, and a lot of things that I kind of grew up with thinking this would be really cool in a fantasy series. And so they do that. So the book cover, the front of it, has Colleen front and center, Cade, who is the gentleman with the missing hand, and Brina, who is in the background, and she is who I'm going to be reading about in this bit. So I have given her a task to accomplish in the third book, which is quite difficult for her, seeing as elves, she's an elf, and elves are persecuted in this world quite badly. And any of them that are seen in public will be kind of, unless they're a slave and they're owned by someone, they'll be hunted and pressed into cages and what have you. So she has to find a way to get to another place and to get a crew together to do it. So it's very, very difficult for her. So she is tailing someone in a city called Seas Keep. So I'm just going to read a little bit for the next few minutes because I've already spoken for 2 minutes. So I hope you enjoy it. Thanks very much. You can find more of my stuff on www.davidgreenwriter.com. So enjoy the reading. Seas Keep had a reputation for smuggling elves to Avastia, but the majority of folk weren't elf-friendly. Not even the smugglers were, as Brina had discovered. Coin motivated them, and a female elf in the prime of her life would fetch a pretty price on the slave market for most. Much more than what one could charge for safe passage. In her experience, some did have altruistic hearts and would do the right thing when pressed. Unfortunately, it had been decades since she'd passed through Seas Keep last, and her contacts were long dead. Selfish or driven by empathy, she had no idea which camp Curran belonged to, but she had to find out, quickly. Interest you in a new cloak? A trader called out, as Brina watched Curran pass through one of the market districts, his head swivelling like a weather vane in a bluster as he searched for fresh custom. Coated with material of my own creation to keep the rain from soaking in, not like that one you're wearing. That won't last you long out in Seas Keep. No, it won't indeed. Brina shook her head, but Curran paused at the next stall over, talking with the woman selling her wares. Pulling her hood tighter and lowering the pitch of her voice, she nodded. Nothing like talking to a trader to blend in. Sounds much better than this old thing. Can't argue with that, she replied in a hoarse rasp. How much? Well, that depends, doesn't it? The trader gave her cloak a speculative look. No interest in her face, her hood concealed. Not when there was coin to be made. Seems to me like you really need this, so it does. Winter's only going to get colder, not to mention wetter. And if you're planning on wearing that thing, I reckon you won't be seeing the spring. He trailed off, eyes flicking over Brina's shoulder. Seeing Curran still engaged in his conversation at the next stall over, Brina followed the trader's stare. The crowd parted as two hooded figures made their way through, their purple veils marking them as members of the widow's sect. Even a pair of the city guards stepped aside. Brina frowned after them, studying the poise and grace with which they walked, then shook her head. The cult didn't interest her. Only Curran did. And while he talked, so would she. Hanging back and watching him without busying herself would be too obvious, even for a human. Widow sect, the trader whispered. Bad for business when they show their veils round here. Why? Well, buying and selling has tempo, so it does. A feeling. Almost has a life of its own, doesn't it? So when members of the sect appear, everyone gets a little solemn, don't they? Takes the rain out of our clouds. Rain out of our clouds. She'd heard the saying a few times from the locals, like the prospect was an ill thing to consider. Suppose you have to like the wind and rain if you choose to live in Sea's Keep, Tiema humans. Brina glanced after them, the crowd coming together again as they moved away. The sex business didn't concern her. Right then, only one person in the city interested her, and Curran still stood deep in conversation. If only she could get closer and listen. I'll give you 1 gula for the cloak, Brina muttered, half focused on the trader, her peripheral vision fixed on her quarry, the dark red one. His eyes lit up with sudden excitement. 1 gula, he cried, for this craftsmanship. Look at the weave, the embroidery, an insult. Didn't I mention I have 2 wives and a husband to provide for? The deluge have mercy on us. 8 gula and nothing less. The folk of Seas Keep bargained for everything. On her 3rd day in the city, Brina asked the merchant for a bowl of piping hot cod stew and agreed to pay the 1.5 gula price immediately. The trader had argued with her as the stew grew cold in his bowl, her stomach eating itself, insisting it was worth way less than that, and his grandmother would free herself from Fenn's clutches and smite him down if he agreed to sell it for such a price he'd named himself in the first place. It eventually settled on 0.5 gula, and Brina swallowed her cold fish dinner with a grimace, the coin she'd saved heavy in her pouch. And I will leave it there because I'm out of time. So thanks for listening, and it is always time to go indie now. Hello, we've been away for so long.
I know, where have you been?
Where have we been? Well, that was a surprise. I did not expect that to come on between the 2 shows. So thanks for that, Joe. And welcome back to Basking in the Evergreen, the after show of the Green Room. And with me is the winner of the episode Angela Eureka Smith. How are you doing?
Good.
It's been a long
I am
time since I saw
basking.
you.
So much basking. I actually was going to disappear, and then your reading kind of caught me, and so then I just wound up staying. So
There you go. That's the way. That's the way to do it, I guess. Just throw them in there. No, that was I just turned the sound off because I don't want to listen to myself. So I have to listen to myself all the time. So that's the way.
I empathize with that.
Yeah, because I mean that's one of the things that do you read when you kind of like when you've written a bit of something, do you read it back out loud?
I do. I actually read it to my husband, who will tell me like that's crap, or oh no, I really like where you're going with this, but this part confused me, which is amazing if you have that resource as a writer. That's so much easier. Not at 3 a.m. He draws a line there, but then we had the little discussion about AI is great for that, but other like me reading it to myself, fiction, absolutely not. But poetry, yes, because poetry, I want to hear the cadence and the sound of the letters together, and I'll probably overread the poetry out loud to the point where people might think there's something a little bit off about me as I'm walking through the grocery store talking about, amplification of, spirit devil or whatever, just crazy talk.
Well, the supermarket is a place that really gets to the core of humanity, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. You're right there in the bread basket of all our needs. So
exactly. So for everyone who's watching, thank you for joining back in with us. And if you do have any comments or have you got any questions for Angela, please do drop them into the chat. We will get to them and all of your comments. And I obviously have some questions for you as well. So you have not been writing since 1966.
No, I was born in 1968. I'll go ahead and admit that.
Okay.
But the magazine was started by Gordon Lensner. I have been writing for a long time, though, since second grade. Like many of us, that was my first story. But yeah, fiction, I started writing in 2010. I was doing newspaper work before then.
Okay. So I mean, before we get into kind of like your own kind of work and everything, so for people that may have missed the first part of the Green Room, so you have your own publishing company and it's a magazine, but it's something that's been around since 1966, which is where that came from. So how did you end up getting involved with that?
The magazine did not have a publisher, I guess, but I was actually going to submit to it, Space and Time magazine. I had been self-publishing for a while, and many of you probably realize when you are self-publishing, you can wind up creating a bubble for yourself. So it's the same readers, and you're not really expanding anywhere because it's the same people all the time that are reading your work. So I had decided I needed to start submitting to magazines and whatnot. So, of course, I did what any of us do. We look online and go, oh, where are my friends getting published? And Christina Singh had just gotten published in something called Space and Time magazine. And so I know I did not do it right, where you're supposed to research the magazine first before you submit. I did not do that. But I went on there, well, I guess to research and to do a little reading about this magazine, and found out they were closing. I did not have a publishing company at the time. I was not even interested in doing that. I had published something of my own, a little art magazine for a year to get it out of my system. That was like my retirement thing. Like, I'm retiring to relax and enjoy my life. I'm going to publish a magazine. Wow, that was so not relaxing. I quit. And then, I was happy what I was doing. And then I saw this Space and Time magazine had been around, I think, for 50 years or something. It was a long time. It's a legacy magazine, and they were closing. And I was kind of like, well, dang, I guess I can't submit there. And then Hildy Silverman, which was the publisher before me, it was actually begun by Gordon Lensner, who started it on a mimeograph machine in high school. And he's kept it going up until now. I think we're on year 64. Oh, wait, how old am I? 50? Yeah, somewhere over 50. We'll just say somewhere over 50. But when I read that, it was Hildy had left a message that said something like she was super sad to see this magazine close because it was legacy. And if anybody could possibly take it over, that would just be great. And I was like, well, that's not me. And then it just kept working in my head that, you just did that art magazine thing. You know how to do layout, you know how to do this. You could do it. I was like, oh, I really don't want to do that because it takes so much time, and then it wound up being just like, the dog that you're like, oh, I can't just leave it in the shelter. It's like haunting me now. And so I was haunted into taking it over. And I will say now I'm in love with it. You know what I mean? It was kind of like originally like, oh, I did think, oh, I'm just going to do this for right now. And then I'll find somebody else I can pass it off to. But I really love it now. There's so much incredible history in that magazine. So the publishing company started to house the magazine because it had been started by a high schooler. And high schoolers are not, I love Gordon and he's awesome. And he did a fabulous job. But, in high school, we're not like thinking things like we should trademark that name. So I did a bunch of that kind of stuff. And then it was like, well, you need to have an LLC to house it for all these legal reasons, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of how that started. So I am like definitely a reluctant publisher.
Yeah, a reluctant one. And you edit it as well. You edit the magazine too. I
do. We also have Linda D. Addison, which does our poetry edits. And we have Gerard Hornier, which is our fiction editor. And then we have a team of first readers. But so it's not like a one person. I could never do this by myself. We have such an amazing team. Diane Weinstein is our art editor. Anthony R. Rhodes. Now you got to do the lift. Anthony R. Rhodes is our layout, who is incredible. Just huge bunch of people, and they're all doing it out of the love of their hearts, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we have the first question, and it's from Nikki. She loves asking questions, as Dan will find out where she is. So you're in Brazil at the moment, and she wants to know what the bookstores are like there.
Well, in Portuguese. I actually just spent 3 hours today in my Portuguese class, and wow, I just am like, well, my tongue does not do all those things that it needs to do in Portuguese. I feel like I'm kind of like, and the instructor's like, here's my lesson right here. I could try to read something off of it. This is my lesson for today. Muito prazer. Good to meet you. Como se diz in Portuguese? And see right there, I can hear his voice going, no, you said that all completely wrong. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, I should have said obrigada to you when you came on.
Oh yeah, obrigada. I know that. I know no fala Portuguese. And so everybody, that's a great one for the Uber drivers, because they're like, oh, right. And then they'll just keep talking to you.
Exactly.
Still no fala Portuguese, but the bookstores are amazing. They are in Portuguese, so I can't really pick up a lot of books to read. Though I am reading Mario de Andrade, Hallucinated City, which is one of their like big poets, and it's in English on one side, Portuguese on the other. But I will say the Brazilians here love literature. They love their poets. They love their writers. It's amazing how much support and leisure time they have for reading. Like they'll take time out to read, where I feel like in America, we rush through everything so fast, and reading is like a secondary thing.
Mm. And magical realism is quite a vibrant genre in Latin America in general, isn't it? And kind of like in Southern Europe. So, I mean, is there much? Do you see much of that around in Brazil?
I don't know exactly, but I do know they have like a huge, speculative kind of fan base. People playing RPGs, people like that. Whole magic cards are huge here. So. I think that you're probably right. Just without me, I know that Alma Katsu's books have done really good here with the, the thrilling kind. But they just are very. I don't want to say like they devour art and literature, which I find just amazing, especially coming from America, where it's the land of I don't know. That came out of your head. Well, I'm not paying for it, which is kind of what we were talking about in the last show. Yeah.
Well, I couldn't comment. I'm not American, so I could not possibly say. So we consume all of your all America's media quite happily in this part of the world. So we're just like just keep sending it.
It does feel like the rest of the world consumes our media, but we discount it. Maybe it's because it comes from us.
Yeah, maybe. And there's a couple of things that we kind of talked about in the green room that I kind of want to circle back to as well, because I think those some quite interesting. But we have a question here from Joe. Joe C. I think I know who that is. What would you like to see more of from the horror genre? Because you write horror. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say me. I would love to see a lot more of me in horror genre. No, I would say, I mean, the typical answer is to say diversity, but I'm really thrilled. We can always use more, right? Because stories should be a nice cross mix of all cultures and everything. But I'm really happy with what I'm seeing right now in horror. There are so many like diverse stories, and I don't mean even like racially or sexual orientation or anything, just some incredible cultural things coming out, like stories that we don't know normally, beyond the tropes of the vampire, the English tropes. So I'm going to say maybe more of that. I would love more of that. I'd also love more indie published work out there, because 10 years ago when I started doing indie, I guess it's been over 10 years now. It was like everybody here in this audience probably knows, it was like the evil stepchild. Are you vanity? Blah, blah, blah. But I think now we're finally being taken seriously. And I still have authors, and I'm not saying anything against being traditionally published at all, but it's not for everybody. And it's definitely not a goal. It should be something that you weigh. What is your goal first? Is it to make money? Is it to make a huge name? And there's no wrong goals. I don't know why sometimes people are like, well, I'm doing it for the art. Just being flippin' rich could be a great goal. I mean, it's probably not going to be a great one for publishing books, but I'm just saying, I'm not going to judge your goals, but it would be really nice to see some more of that indie. Like, it is starting to be very much like, we're accepted as much as other authors, but there's still that prejudice. So I think many more indies would be good. Yeah. Serious indies, not the AI written,
Right. Yeah. I mean, let us be artists and make some money at the same time, right?
Yeah. But we are. I mean, like, even like this whole channel, this whole Go Indie Now, is part of that whole movement that's making this. Yes, we're here. We're staying. It makes more sense to do it this way. I mean, we have all the tools. The network is here now, so there's no reason not to go indie.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things that was. I'm always kind of like, I'm always reticent to say that's one of the good things about COVID, right? Because obviously it was not good, but there was that benefit of where it was like the world was forced to become a little bit more. Digital than it was before, and it was already quite digital, but it really kind of accelerated this kind of thing where it's like, look, you can do everything online, and we have to do everything online, and it made tools become a lot more available for people
and accepted.
Yes. Yeah, because even doing stuff like this, like, online interviews and stuff, like, it was like one of those things where it's like, well, do we have to do it online? Can we not do it? And now it's
like before COVID, if you said, oh yeah, I teach a workshop online, people would be like, oh, because you couldn't get in a real place. Okay.
Right.
But now people want online. I mean, a lot of the conventions like StokerCon permanently has the virtual aspect of it as well. And most of them, and the crazy thing is they're actually, and I'm speaking in general, I don't want to speak just about StokerCon, but profitable. Things are finally profitable for a lot of these places, and some of them, like the UK Ghost Hunting Festival, was only online, I think,
Yeah, because I'm Nikki wants to know you and Books of Horror. I think that's a Facebook group, I think it is.
No, I don't think so. But send me an invite. I would love to. I mean, I love networking with all the other indies and everything, and eyeballs bleeding. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as it's not my own.
I knew this would happen once Nikki and Anita got to know each other. It's not a good mixture for the rest of humanity. Maybe for those two. I'm at a convention this weekend, and it's a hybrid one. It's mainly in person, but two of the panels that I'm going to be on is going to have a virtual member of the panel. I just kind of like expecting this like massive big screen behind us with them like staring down at us.
Like, don't look at the man behind the curtain.
Right, yeah. Do you remember V for Vendetta when it was always like, what
Yeah.
was he called? Was he called the minister? Was he or something like that? Was he Parliament? Wasn't it Parliament?
Yeah,
Just
I
appear.
think so. I mean, it's been a while, and I mostly remember V and that whole thing. But yeah, that would be really cool. Somebody needs to do that now. Have like a kind of a dystopian thing with and I want to do that. I mean, I don't really have the whole like, listen to me kind of visage, but I would try.
Yeah. See, the thing is with dystopia. I mean, I do like dystopian stuff, but it's got to the point where it's kind of like, where do you go with it? Because it's like some of it is so close to the bone now, and it's kind of a little bit. And I think that's why there is that. I'm gonna be on the panel for cozy fantasy, right? But my kind of, and there is a cozy fantasy genre, but I'm kind of like, well, all fantasy is cozy now when you compare, and so is horror in a way when you compare it to what is going on in real life.
Yeah, and that actually changed, I think, when COVID hit. I think a lot of us, I stopped writing, not really stopped writing, but I stopped writing horror specifically and started doing a lot more science fiction stories, I noticed, because I was like, well, I mean, we're already living it right now. There was so much fear and everything. But I think the reason why we write horror a lot of times is because it's like a role play kind of thing. And they actually did a study and they found out that people that are horror fans were the most resilient during the whole pandemic. Right. I mean, they were the happiest. They were the ones that had the less, mental stresses and everything, because we role play it all the time. I mean, hey, 2020 was kind of boring if you think of it from a fictional sense. I mean, like, have we not read that story in quite a few times?
Yeah.
But being in it then changed it. Like, well, do we really want to write the book that we're in? Yeah. So for me, that was my personal thing. I kind of went a lot to science fiction at that point.
It can always get worse. It always does get worse. So, this is a good point from Joe about conventions becoming too localized and, the online thing. And the thing as well, because the other thing about COVID is that people don't really mind about technical difficulties anymore. But a few years ago, people were like, okay, everything has to be perfect. Like my sound has to be perfect. The picture has to be. And everyone now is like, who cares?
God forbid a dog jumps in the thing. There's no dogs in your house.
Right. Yeah. I think that all came to an end. Do you remember it was? I don't know if this came over to you guys on across the Atlantic and everything, but there was a politician in the UK that was being interviewed at home, obviously because everyone was at home. But it was about Brexit, not Brexit. Sorry, it was about that was happening at the same time. It was about COVID regulations and everything. And then his child comes barging into the rooms blah 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 and then the nanny comes running in after them and
that's hilarious.
It was amazing. I think from that point on, everyone was just like, you know what?
There was so many fun things that happened during that time. Like there was somebody who was, I think it was a lawyer presenting a court case, and he had been letting his grandkids,
with the cat,
yeah. And he was like, I promise I'm not a cat. And then, I mean, I have watched that so many times.
It's so good. I love it a bit where it's like, I'm prepared to go forward with my thing. And therefore else is like, well, we're not. You literally got a cat filter on your face, mate. You can't do this.
That's so funny.
Nikki thinks you're right about horror writers used to dealing with trauma and inflicting trauma on other people as well. It must be said. So what is it? I do like horror. I have written horror as well. I did a lot of horror short stories. I'm a big horror fan. So I'm always interested as what is it that draws you to the darker side of life?
I think it's feeling comfortable there. I can't speak for everybody, but I will say for me, it was, I grew up in haunted houses. My family are mediums in Okinawa. It's called Yuta. But there, it's just kind of a thing that happens. And it's not like the big deal it is here necessarily, I'll say the Western culture, it's just a thing that happens. You can go to the doctor, you can go to the Yuta, and you get your spirit balance, or you can get your physical thing, but they're often the same things that are going on. Like you're sick because you ticked off some ancestor, so you have to balance it. So because of that, whether it was real or imagined or whatever, that influence was in my life a lot as a kid. But my family was trying to, when they immigrated over to Hawaii, they were trying to kind of get rid of it. And so I feel like this fear got built up there, and this, Christianity kind of thing got into it. So by the time it got to me, the third generation, it was very much that bump you hear. That's the spirit that's out to get you. It's trying to possess you. It's and I never speak to the voices, that you hear, blah, 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 which of course don't tell the white coats that you actually do that either. So I have these memories of like me, I think probably pre-kindergarten, asking my mom, who are all the little brown people with the red hair that live in our house with us? And her just kind of going like, never talk to them. And I was kind of like, well, they seem friendly. And she's like, they're not friendly. They're here to damage you, Which, interestingly enough, that is an Okinawan spirit. Like in Okinawa, that's like I can't remember what they're called at the top of my head. So growing up with that, then you get to kindergarten, and kindergarten is pretty okay, but it doesn't take a lot of years before everybody starts realizing you are the weird kid, and you have a lot of weird experiences. So I wound up being ostracized and just being a real loner. And then I got to, it was Catholic school. And anybody who knows me is like, oh God, she's going on about the nuns again. But I had gone to the library, and I was a huge reader, being, lonely children. And I had found a book by Alfred Hitchcock, which I actually have behind me because it made that much of an impression on me. And there was a story in there by Thomas Sturgeon, whose name now I feel like I somehow got that wrong, but it's Shadow on the Wall. And I read that story, and it was probably my first horror story that I ever really read. And it just was like this. And yes, I am a Scorpio, to answer Nikki's question. But it was the first thing that was kind of like, oh, other people live in this dark place as well. And it's okay. And, screw those other kids. Like, I got my own ghost posse over here on the wall. Like it was just kind of like this feeling of acceptance for the first time. So I know a lot of times you can come at horror as a trauma thing, like to heal from trauma. And that probably is a lot of it as well, because there was a lot of trauma. But for me, it really is a feeling of inclusiveness. Like, oh yeah, we can all be kind of dark and creepy. I'm not alone. There's other dark and creepy people. Look, A.F. Stewart is in the audience. and it's okay to be like that. We don't all have to be sunshines and, rainbowy. So that's definitely a feeling of family, friends, familiarity is what attracts me to it.
Yeah. And, Nikki is also quite nice, to say.
Yeah, I haven't really got to meet her yet as a winner. This is great, but I mean, it was not a bad gig to lose as well.
Exactly. And her book is quite dark as well in lots of places. So you might, that's, the sunnier side of life, but also that. But what kind of interests me about you as well, obviously your background. I think it's your third generation, and I don't want to butcher this, but it's Shimanshu.
Shimanshu, yeah, which is basically Okinawa is the name of Japan, which we're not to get too much into politics, but Okinawa is an island that is actually being illegally occupied by Japan right now. But politically, it's like, oh, well, they're just Japanese. They're actually not. They don't speak Japanese. The languages are completely different. DNA is completely different. The culture is completely different. So that's actually why I started saying Shimanshu instead of Okinawan, to kind of point out that it is different. It is not Okinawan. So I actually do that as hey, ask me about my thing, so that I can tell you, but also go do your own research, because I am certainly not the expert as a third generation. I didn't even find out that Japanese and Okinawa were different until I think I was 35, because when you're Okinawan, because there was so much second class citizen kind of stuff and prejudice going on, a lot of people just said they were Japanese. And so they wouldn't get that kickback. And so then later I found out this, which I was kind of like, it was not like a ground shaking moment. It was just kind of like okay. And I didn't really think anything of it until I wrote Tortured Willows. And it was 3 of us got together to write about our Asian heritage, which I'm 3rd generation. So I'm 25% Asian. I'm not full Asian. And I was like, well, what am I going to write about? I guess, you know, I mean, I eat a lot of rice at every meal. I eat seaweed, and, you know, I have ghosts around me all the time and ancestors and stuff, you know, which I guess is kind of different. But then I started doing the research, and it absolutely exploded my world because I found out all that stuff about Okinawa and the illegal occupation, and started trying to do like books and stuff. Sorry, that was a mosquito that was batting away. Trying to do like the books that I would find are really hard to come by. And it was just like this information was being suppressed. And so it was kind of like a feeling of like, I have to identify with this and try to be maybe a voice to point a little bit of attention to it, because so many people can't. They don't have that connection. Oh yes, this is like bothering me now. I've switched my office around like recently, and I just kind of found that there. And so now I'm always like, oh, that crown thing is on my head again.
Yeah, you have to keep it perfectly there. So Joe has been to Okinawa as well.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. And he said it's like the Puerto Rico of Japan.
Yeah, and that's actually one of my goals, is to go there now.
Puerto Rico.
Really everywhere. That's why I'm in Brazil right now, but to Okinawa, and now Puerto Rico is on my list.
Yeah. So, you know, what I was kind of interested about that, because obviously you talk about like how the culture is different to Japan, because, you know, they're a different people. Is there that kind of shared kind of, because I think you touched on it yourself there when you were talking about Okinawa spirits. Is that kind of shared culture with, like, because obviously that kind of Japanese culture of like, and the relationship with spirits is very different to a Western kind of look at it. Is that something that's shared there as well?
Oh yeah, and definitely what I was actually told by Okinawans, because of course I was kind of like, well, I don't want to, you know, claim being Okinawan and look like I'm trying to like elbow my way in because I don't speak the language or anything. And I was told that it's a language of spirit, which really shocked me. There is no written Okinawan language, which is one reason why it's dying, which, you know, hello, the power of writing. But also that I completely lost my train of thought there. I'm still so blown away by the fact that there's no written language. So my next thought is always, I'm going to invent that, but I'm not. I'm sorry, I would not presume to do that. But yeah, there is that. But that's Asian in general tends to have that. Like any of my Asian friends I talk to, ghosts or, you know, ancestors are right there. You know, it's just a part of life. You know.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it's one of those things as well. Like, you know, with I know Joe is always very interested in movies, as we all are. But, you know, like the Western remakes of particularly Japanese movies. Some of them are quite good, but they always kind of miss. There's always that kind of just that thing where it's like not quite nailing this cultural relationship with. It's not quite a fear sometimes, you know. Yeah. Because they're quite comfortable with the fact that their ancestors are there and around them.
I think that is the miss. So like I started getting serious into doing research on the actual spiritual side and what is a Yuta and what is a Yuta do about 7 years ago. And it was because all of a sudden my uncle had passed, and I really loved him a lot. We were pen pals forever, but he passed away. And then shortly after, everything in my house went wrong. You know, all the tires went flat in one day. So car in the garage, I'm going to work. I go out to the garage, all 4 tires are flat on the car. Okay. I feel like that's vandalism somehow. I don't know how it happened, but it feels like vandalism. So I got on my scooter to go to work, and my scooter tires were all flat. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I only worked like 2 miles away. So I got on my bicycle, and it's all in the same morning. And my bicycle tires both went flat as soon as I could see the place. And I actually have the person I work for can completely verify this because it freaked her out totally. But as I would walk around the cafe, this was my retirement job after the newspapers, the blenders and stuff would go off behind me. The TV would turn on. Then I got home, the stove literally exploded, the electric stove. I started preheating it, and all of a sudden it was like, poof, and just was dead. Never know what happened to it. The microwave did that, but it was like this series of like, oh my gosh, what is going on in our lives? And so I kind of, I don't know, maybe listened or whatever, like maybe don't ignore the ghostly voices kind of thing. And it was like the message I received was that it's my uncle, and that he's not angry or anything, but he's like confused, and he needs somebody to pass and help him pass over, like basically take him by the hand. And, you know, and this went on for a week that I can't even remember all the things, but it was a pretty crazy week. And so I just kind of did the listening, like, I don't know what I'm doing, but okay, I'm going to do this really weird thing. And I put rice out on the front porch and some incense, and it wasn't sake. I think it was like bourbon or something, and a cigarette because he smoked. And so I lit a cigarette up and I kind of propped it up in the rocks. And then I just spoke with him and left the door open and kind of like, hey, uncle. And it felt so weird. Like, please, God, don't let my neighbors be looking right now at what I'm doing. But then everything stopped like that. And so I think that's kind of the difference right there, is that my reaction was kind of like, wow, something is really going on. Like, my house is haunted. What the heck? What is the source? What can I do to fix this? Where I think in Western culture, we tend to be very, and this is how I grew up, oh my God, the house is haunted, let's move, you know, and
yeah.
And it's super scary, and, you know, and I don't remember really feeling scared at all that whole time, just kind of like, well, damn it, now I need a new microwave. Well, damn it, now the stove is, you know, so it was like definitely not a happy thing. Tires are expensive, you know, but it was like not a terrifying thing. Terrible, but not terrifying.
Yes.
So,
And you I mean, from talking to you, like, I had one of your works kind of piqued my interest, and from talking to you, I can kind of see why. So the end of May is it's kind of like about the origins of things again. Like, I think that's something that you seem to be very, very kind of interested in. And obviously, this one is May is looking for the truth behind the Jersey Devil.
yes.
So was that something that was? Because obviously, when people kind of write these kind of things, it's usually an interest that the writer also has. So is this kind of like, you know, is myth something that is something that interests you?
It is when it intersects with reality. And if I'm smiling a lot and kind of blushing, that was my first fictional book, and it's so terrible. Right. You don't have to go read it, anybody. Please just ignore it.
Everyone thinks about the first book.
And it's probably true, but I am glad I wrote it. We lived in a place called Browns Mills, New Jersey, which the Jersey Devil is very much believed in there as a reality, like as a very, like, it is here. Kind of the way Asians think about ghosts. In Browns Mills, New Jersey, you believe in the Jersey Devil. They found his footprint about 5 miles from the house where we had lived, I think in the 80s. Like, there's all this documentation and everything. But the thing about that area is it is absolutely terrifying. And that house was the house that we were like, oh my God, we're moving. I mean, we could have like a 3-hour talk all about that show. But all the creepy things and all the creepy tropes were in that house, down to me cutting vegetables one day, and my 3 kids were over there watching TV, and I heard a voice whisper, "This is how it starts." And I was kind of like, you know, like, what starts? And then it said, when a mother kills her children. I was like, oh, dropping the knife. Okay, somebody take me in or something. I don't know what's going on, you know. It was really terrifying. And then it was my daughter hearing laughter that would echo through the house as well at 3. So she's not going to make that up. That kind of made me go, okay, this house is haunted. In like maybe the bad way, not where I can put rice on the porch and like just like lead it out, but like, let's go. Yes. And so end of May, a lot is me dealing with that experience of living in that area where, like, even my editor for the newspaper I worked for, like, I think he was like 24 or something. So, you know, not really somebody you think of as like scared of the dark. But he used to say, like, yeah, I do not like to work late. After dark, nobody goes outside. If your laundry is hanging outside, You just leave it. If you need to go out and get milk or something, you just don't. You just don't have milk in your coffee the next day. They found a dismembered body in the dumpster of the Wawa. If anybody is from the East Coast, they know what a Wawa is, like 2 miles from our house. So it's a pretty creepy area.
Yeah, I actually I wrote a short story about the origins of the Jersey Devil as well.
So interesting.
Yeah. And it was set in that. I think it actually is Brown Hills, or it's set in that someone goes there and visits it. And out into it was a Pemberton Township, is it? I think.
Yep, it is in Pemberton Township.
There you go.
That's amazing memory.
It's still there. It's still in my head. But yeah, because I kind of like all that kind of stuff as well. Like, like where did it come from? That kind of thing.
Because there's a grain of truth there somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. So end of May was your first book.
That was my first fiction book. Yeah. Yep.
So
I had no idea what I was doing.
But we never do our first.
A.F. Stewart was my first blurb. I didn't even know what a blurb was at the time because I knew her when I was writing that book. And I believe she was pretty instrumental in like telling me what passive voice was and things like that. So.
And she says it's not terrible when you were saying it was terrible. She says it's not terrible.
Thank you.
So you're obviously, we're all proud of all of our books, some more than others and some in different kind of ways, but which one would be the kind of one that you're most proud of?
Well, it's not published yet, but I just finished it. It's called In Eugenie, and it actually is my first novel because End of May is a novella, and Bittersweets I loved, and I've got the third book to that. It's 3 novellas together, and I loved that one. But In Eugenie is about it's mystical realism, or I'm like, what do you say without giving things away? It occurs on a fictional Okinawa during a fictional World War II, because that's not my story. My family actually left as the mediums. They went, oh, something bad is coming. Let's go. And so my family pretty much left the islands before World War II came.
Right.
But so that's not my story to tell about the suffering and everything. So this is my imagined version of it. And it's through the eyes of 3 girls who come of age and their 3 brothers. And then there's Shisa in it, which are kind of like the guardians of the island. They're like lion dogs and some stuff like that. So that is probably the hardest thing I've ever worked on, considering like I usually publish pretty fast. I wrote that last July and I'm still editing it and polishing it. So.
But you're proud of it though.
I am very proud of it. I'm like super excited, and I am a short form writer normally. I can whip out a short story and a novella, no problem. But this I held with the same story. I mean, it is 3 stories intertwined, so I kind of cheated there. But it's the same story. And I was going to say, and nobody dies, amazingly enough. But yeah, actually, it's a war, so there's a lot of dead people.
Of course.
Nobody important dies.
Dies.
Oh, maybe that was a spoiler. Sorry.
No one you care about dies.
Yeah, exactly. Usually I kill off the people I love in a story, but no, I let everybody live. And maybe, I'm saying now I have to kill somebody just to put a surprise in there.
Exactly. Just throw it in the end of the second act.
Mm-hmm.
Right to a template. So. Well, let's have a chat about some of the stuff that came up during in the green room. And if anyone else, people that are watching, if you've got questions, please pop them in there as well, and we can get to them, and your comments as well. So one of the things that kind of came up that we both kind of were interested in was, and you asked me the question, but I'm going to ask you. So we kind of talked about the threshold of mistakes for indie writers is much is it lower or higher? I think the threshold is the acceptance of mistakes is like that we're held to a higher standard. So why do you think that is?
I honestly think it's because we're closer to our readers, and because these books are our babies. When somebody comes to us and says, "Oh, I found a typo in your book," we kind of take it as like somebody is judging us. Because our work kind of is us a lot of times. it's like somebody coming up and saying, your child said something really stupid yesterday or was bad in school, or, you do take it personally. So I think that's why, but it's not that. It's maybe, and this is my theory, I don't know if this is true or not, but my thought is that it's not necessarily that they're harder on us, possibly, even though it feels like that. But it's just like, if you see something in Simon and Schuster, a typo, who are you going to tell? They're inaccessible. We are usually here. Like, you can find us on Facebook. You can find our web pages. You can chat with us on here. I mean, look at this. We've a packed house with people talking in chat right now, and any one of them right now could like point out all the mistakes I've made. Oh God, is the show almost over? But so it is higher, I think, but maybe not in a way of it's meant to be a negative thing to us, but more even like I was paying attention,
Right.
and I'm helping. I do have a friend that points out every mistake I ever make on anything in like my blog or anything. And, and it is helpful. I mean, I always have that initial reaction of, I meant that. Okay, well, maybe not that spelling. All right, you're right. It is a mistake. And now I'm going to go fix it. And I'm better for fixing it. But, I still always, it's still annoying sometimes.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's the thing about the editing where Dan was saying about when you kind of get those edits and he was like, you don't understand what, and then you kind of go away. I think whenever you get any kind of like corrections or anything like that, the best thing to do is to read them and then to leave them for a little while, and let the ego just leave, then come back to them and go, okay, right, yeah. I get this now.
Yeah, absolutely. And also there's always that balance, the two sides of that. The other is just don't take everybody at face value too. If somebody says something about your work, you have to judge what is your intention. I mean, obviously don't argue how, if the I is before E, that is not a hill you want to stand on. But for like Bittersweets, which was a Stoker finalist, that was my first Stoker finalist. I was told from a really prestigious writing person whose name we probably all know, but I will not say it because I am a bigger person. But you can ask me privately. He told me, don't write that book. Don't publish that. I was at a workshop, workshopping this book. And he was like, nobody would care about that. Nobody wants to know about recreational suicide. It's a horrible idea. And I'm like, well, it's a horror book, was my thought. Recreational suicide seems pretty horrible. And I'm, writing horror. But yeah, so basically, if I had listened to him, I would have just thrown the whole thing in the bin and just ignore it. But I thought about it and I was like, no, I trust myself on this, so maybe it is terrible, but I'm going to go through with it, and I'm really glad I didn't listen in that case.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the whole parts of horror though, is to push boundaries though. That is what it is, isn't it? And, and it can go very extreme and it can go to some very uncomfortable places because that's by design what it is like. So that's a very strange bit of advice to receive, isn't it?
from a fellow horror author as well. So I mean, kind of, I always think hate is the place you don't want to go, like promoting, say, violence against women, even though that is also part of horror. So where's the line drawn? I always feel like if you're glamorizing it, that's the line. Like, we don't want to promote it.
Right.
We can certainly talk about it because horror is a trigger genre. Everything about horror is a trigger. We should all wear shirts that say, I am the trigger, because we are.
Right.
I mean, for horror authors. So.
Yeah, because you are right, because there is some people, there are some writers that would glamorize some stuff that shouldn't be glamorized, and that is a niche of its own, I suppose, that people do look for. But what do you just mentioned triggers there? Obviously, when you mention triggers, you have to kind of talk about horror's supposed to help process trauma. Trigger warnings, would that be something? And as a writer and an editor and a publisher, what are your thoughts on trigger warnings?
It is really a sticky situation, especially as a horror writer. And I'm honestly, the funny thing is I'm on the mental health initiative of the Horror Writers Association. Like, I'm part of that committee that is trying to put, it's not necessarily so much as the trigger warnings, though we're talking about like what is a trigger warning, but more portraying mental health in a positive light. Like, if you are manic depressed, that doesn't mean you're a serial killer. Like, trying to put, sometimes that could actually be a positive thing. Like, maybe, or if you're autistic, that's actually a superpower in some way. You know what I mean? So instead of just making it like, oh, the autistic kid did it. So that's what that initiative is about, is kind of trying to break it up so that we have a more realistic approach to something that is very real. Neurodivergence is real. I'm actually in the process of being tested for high functioning autism right now. And it kind of came out because of one of my grandchildren, and all of that. It's like, oh, well, I'm actually very much like that. So it's not just me that wears the same thing every day. Different versions of it I do wash, but I like this dress, this color. That's all I'm going to wear. So, but as far as trigger warnings themselves, I have only ever used one once in my own work, and that was for the magazine. And that was Alessandro Manzetti had done a graphic novel piece, and there was a lot of police being exploded in it. I'll just put it like that, as just part of the story. But it was right after, like, Black Lives Matter was going on at that point, and there was a lot of police on both sides. There was all kinds of stuff going on. I was like, you know what? We're going to put a trigger warning on this because it's happening right now, and possibly if we had done something like, I don't know, a pandemic piece, which we didn't, I probably would have put a trigger, like losing a loved one to, a very similar situation as COVID. I probably would have put a trigger warning on it. But for most of the part, I'm kind of like, it is horror. And I apologize if you are triggered. If it's something extreme, like police being exploded during a time of that, I probably would put a trigger warning. But if that wasn't going on, I probably wouldn't put a trigger warning on, because it's horror. And I honestly hope you get triggered. I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying that, but.
Well, it's, there's lots of different, there's lots of different schools of thought on it. And it's like, I do kind of find it a little bit weird where people get very, very annoyed about them, because it's like, well, you don't have to read the trigger warnings. Like, if you know that they're there, you don't have to look at them. If you want to look at them, you can look at them. You know what I mean? It just seems like it's a bit of a strange thing for people to get upset about.
If you don't like murder, dead bodies, violence, exploding policemen, then probably this is not the genre that you might want to be reading.
As well, yeah, there is that hand in it as well, where it's like, because it's such a wide genre of different tastes, and different things, and it's like, obviously it is horror, so you're not going to be going in there to read something that's going to have a happily ever after. And
the Game of Thrones, where was that trigger warning? I got all kinds of triggers out of watching Game of Thrones. I write fantasy, and I did put trigger warning in my last book because it's fantasy, it's not horror. And that's not as common.
Right, and it was a very, very specific thing as well, where I was like, I didn't want to. I wanted people to understand what the character was kind of going through, like mentally, but also I didn't want to. If someone else was kind of had that experience in the past, I didn't want them to make them relive it unexpectedly as well.
Oh yeah, and I think that's brilliant. Like, I think that's exactly where trigger warning belongs.
Yeah, because it's not where you'd expect it to always be, right? So it's an interesting one. I kind of like some of the horror groups that I'm kind of still in from right when I was doing short stories. There's a lot of people that get so upset about it. It's like about the fact that some people used them. It's like, well, it's not something to get upset about, really.
Right now, though, I think we're in a little bit of a time of fear globally, and so I think that lashing out and that fear, and that like, this upset me, that upset me, is just kind of us being upset in general. I mean, there's a lot going on in the world, environmentally, fiscally, like, where do you want your crisis? Let's just bring out the book of Revelations and I don't know. It's like, that's what it feels like to me, kind of. But also that's because we're so connected. I think that we hear all this. If a pin drops in, Ireland, I'm going to know about it, and I'm probably going to think
Right.
it's happening in my backyard.
Yeah. It's easier to be upset about things that don't really matter, because it's like, well, I can be as angry as I want about this. It doesn't really matter. Before we wrap up and hand over to the next interview, which is Dan Myers and Nikki DeKeuster, I wanted to kind of talk to you just before we finished a little bit about rabbit holes. So, because I think that you're someone who goes down lots of rabbit holes when you're researching. Would this be
so many rabbit holes.
Okay. What is the most extensive rabbit hole that you've gone down whilst you've been researching something?
Oh, probably, and I think it was actually for the newspaper. So I was not supposed to be looking for anything completely horrible. And I was actually at work, the whole not safe for work kind of thing. And then it kind of occurred to me that I was at work listening to this. But I started out looking for something. Of course, you never know where the rabbit hole begins in hindsight. And I wound up listening. I found the audio to the Jonestown suicides, where they drank the Kool-Aid, which actually wasn't Kool-Aid. It was a knockoff brand, but
not
it's
fake Kool-Aid.
Yeah, fake Kool-Aid. I can't remember what the brand was, but because the pastor was speaking, and so the whole thing is recorded down to the sounds of people dying. And this is available. It's a history thing, not a morbid thing at all. It was history, and maybe a little bit morbid. It's very morbid. But so it was that, and then somehow I found the photo of a woman who had jumped from, I think it's called The Beautiful Sleep or The Beautiful Dream, but it's a really famous photo I'd never heard of. But she jumped off the New York State building, I think, and died on a car. She hit a car, and a photography student just happened to be walking by. This is all in the same search, by the way.
Right.
What was just happened to be walking by, and there's this body that had crushed in a car, and he took a photo of her, but it's because she was a very beautiful woman, and it just looks like she's in repose. So, and then as I'm looking at all this, and I'm like listening to the, death gargles of people passing away, my publisher walked by for the newspaper where I worked at. I'm like, that'd be funny if he heard it here, because he'd go, "That's what you were listening to on company time," because he was kind of a stickler like that. But yeah, that was kind of my worst rabbit hole, where it's 3 p.m, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm not in Jonestown. Oh shoot, I'm at work. Oh, clear my search history. I shouldn't have been listening to this on company time, for no research at all that would possibly do me any good in Niceville, Florida. So,
and it wasn't anything to do with what you were working on at the time, no.
No, and I want to say it started out as an interview about a new fire chief or something. I remember it was something like where afterwards, like, how did I even get there? But I think he had a similar name as to maybe somebody. I don't remember how. You never know how you get through a rabbit hole. But there is usually always a rabbit there, I have found. So
somewhere along the line. Angela, thank you so much for talking to me, and well done for winning the green room as well. So where can everyone find you?
AngelaYSmith.com. All of my stuff is kind of linked through there, all my socials. So yeah, pretty much my name. You don't even have to spell Eureka. I'm just not going to do that to you.
And obviously you've got a new book coming out. So when do you think that will be out?
In Eugenie, well, we just came out with Unquiet Spirits, which is actually I edited with Lee Murray. So that's like the one that we're kind of really promoting right now, which is 21 Asian women got together and wrote about their experiences with horror. As horror writers, it's nonfiction, and it's part of a kind of an unconventional trilogy. The first one came out with a different publisher, and it was fiction anthology. Then a poetry anthology, which I published through Eureka Publishing. And then this is published through Black Spot Books, and it's nonfiction essays. So kind of really weird, but they're all tied together. And then in Eugenie, I don't know, but I'm still trying to decide if I'm going to self-publish that, which I probably will, or if I'm going to do something else with it. I've approached some agents, but I just am like just that person that's just going to probably do it myself. I'm just like that.
Well, why not? We have
Yeah,
the technology.
exactly.
Well, thank you very much, and best of luck with the launch and with the one that you have out at the moment.
Thank
And
you.
everyone watching, thank you so much for joining in. Stay tuned. I will be right back, but the Basking in the Evergreen will be right back with Nikki DeKeuster and Daniel Myers. So thank you, and see you all soon.
Thank you.
Because it's always time to go indie now.
Hello. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Nikki. How are you?
A long time no see.
Yeah. I think this is actually the first time we've been on something together, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I haven't been on a whole lot of things on Go Indie now, so but that's changing now. So I am your host for this segment of Basking in the Evergreen. We haven't quite decided what to call it, or if we're going to even call it anything, like skulking in the darkness, or
For the
something.
losers, you mean?
Yes. The not winners, the runner-ups. I was toying with the idea of calling us the outsiders. I really did like that book growing up. So, but whatever we call it, we're here with the wonderful Daniel Myers, who is ever so supportive of so many other authors. I see you all the time out there, being a friendly face. And I think we need that, not just in the world, but in this world. So Daniel, why don't you take a little bit and tell us about yourself, about your work, and what you do. Hold up your books, show yourself off.
Sure. Pardon me. My name is Dan Myers, obviously. I wrote a book during COVID called Alejandre Rising. I actually wrote 2 books. The second book is coming out in July. I went through and I had one massive book that was like 290,000 words, and then started, pitching it and found out that that's way too big. So I broke it into 2. And there's a nice natural breaking point, so it worked out really nicely. But I've been editing the second one, and that'll be, as I said, out in July. And yeah, that's kind of me. I'm an accountant by trade.
So you're used to fiddly stuff, right?
Yes. So it's
Angela. Oh, man. Sorry. Reading the comments.
Oh. So yeah, I mean, I'm used to head down and writing stuff, but I'm usually writing audit reports and, testing descriptions and that kind of thing, not necessarily fantasy or epic fantasy, high fantasy, military fantasy, whatever you want to call it. So yeah,
but I think it uses the same
so.
parts of the brain, that's what I was getting at with the accounting, is because for writing, you really got to be able to get into the details, even if it flows, you got to be able to go back and edit. So to me, it's the same type of brain that deals with the numbers. So
yeah, I think just the opposite. I'm so good with numbers, but you get words and I trip over them. And
well, yes, one is more logical and analytical in that sense. I can see that.
And I
but
treat my writing that way.
more,
I plot everything out. I have
yeah,
my
so you find that
outline.
happy medium.
Yeah.
I can see why, because one of your topics was, in your pet peeves, is not using an editor. And you can completely see why. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what your editing process is like then?
Well, I have a good friend who's an English teacher, and so I always run it through him first, and he makes comments because he kind of is aware of the story. We've discussed it over the years, and he has
So this is a soul story for you, something that stayed with you that you just got to get out. Yeah.
Unfortunately. And it's changed over the years, but yeah, I mean, I had this kind of story built up like in college and just never. I started writing it twice, then dropped. I had a computer crash, so I lost everything, so I just stopped for a while, and then I started again a few years later, and then stopped, and then lost that. And like I said, during COVID, I just started writing, and I was just amazed how quick the words flowed and how easy it was once I just really started devoting time each day and each week to writing. It it took me about 2 weeks to plot everything out, and then I just started filling in the gaps. It's like, okay, write this scene and this section, and I'd write the whole kind of chain of events, and going through different chapters. So this, each individual scene wouldn't necessarily be in the same chapter, and then I just go in and keep doing it, and eventually I had 290,000 words on the paper.
That is impressive, and that there was a natural spot to just cut them. That's very, very lucky.
Yeah, it was very fortunate.
Did you have to go do any fiddling to make it work, or was it absolutely okay?
Absolutely.
So it didn't just slide right in there.
No, and because there was some stuff that I had foreshadowing the end of the book, but now that was in the first book, so that had to be moved to the second book. So it was a lot of effort going through, and I wanted to keep some foreshadowing. So there's some foreshadowing in the first book that really doesn't happen until the third book.
Yeah, that's always fun to do when you know where you're going with the series.
Yeah, but I had too much of that after I just split the books down the middle, and so then I had to do it. And even the second book now, I'm finding that because I dumped all of that into the second book, I'm having to trim that back a lot, because now it's not spread out over a big book. It's all just thrown right, and it would be all in the beginning of the second book, which kind of delays the second book too much. So that's what I'm working on right now, is kind of summarizing that and getting it shorter, and so we can get into the story of the book.
Yeah, the second book is kind of a different animal, isn't it? Because David brought this up in one of his shows, that you're sort of marketing your first book and trying to figure that out while you're doing your second. And it's a different world than when maybe you were in just your own space zoning on your book, or maybe with your writing group. Do you have a writing group, or
I don't. Like I have 4 editors I work with. My friend is one, and then I send it to a developmental editor, professional person. I didn't know them before I hired them, and they do kind of the developmental, make sure my plot lines are consistent.
Yeah, that's actually what I do. One of the many things that I do is developmental editing.
Okay.
So I get it. I'm deep in one right now, actually, and it's a lot of fun to be able to see that soul of the writer and help them craft it.
Yeah. Then my third editor is actually kind of it's editorial editor, but she does a lot of the same stuff. And then I have somebody that does proofing. So corrects all my grammar, which she has the toughest job.
So you're not too much of a grammar Nazi on yourself, you were saying.
I try to be, but like I have pro
There's
writing.
so many fiddly rules with it.
There are, and I'm not.
Endless.
I didn't pay attention during English classes. I was like, I speak English. Why do I have to take English classes? And all these rules and stuff just seem to be arbitrary. And
Well, and we live in them, so we sort of know them. But if it's any consolation, I had my editor for my novel tell me that, like, not to feel bad about it, not knowing where the commas all go, for example, because she has to relook things up a lot of times because there's so many rules and they're conditional. This is why we're so confused. They're subjective. They're not hard and fast rules. So and that just made me feel so much better. I don't know about you or anybody watching, but give yourself a break on the grammar.
if
And that's why
nothing
we
else,
pay them.
I learned what the Oxford comma is now. So, yay.
Right as they take it away, right?
Yeah, I'm still
That's about
using
right.
it now.
Commas are evil. See, and Anita knows evil. So
Everybody says that. I've had several interactions with her on shows, whatever, chat lines. She is the sweetest.
well, yes, she knows evil. Doesn't mean that
yes.
she
Okay.
is evil. There's a difference.
She
right?
writes evil, I guess. I've got to go pick up one of her books. So
Well, and you get it out, and I personally find it a little amusing to look at that darker side and maybe have a bit of an irreverent sense of humor about some things, at least when torturing the characters. So that brings me to my next question for you, actually. What is the darkest or meanest thing that you've ever done to one of your characters?
didn't make the book.
It didn't make the book. Oh, this is like we're getting the special dish here. All right.
Yeah, I had written some torture scenes, and my friend was like, "No, you just don't. No,
Don't go there.
you can't. It's not in the rest of the style of the book." So it was like, because I tell people, I mean, this is more Hobbit than Game of Thrones. Even though it's kind of a Game of Thrones world, it's not so dark and dystopian, and it's not all about everybody
there's a
killing
difference
everybody.
between getting stabbed with sting, right?
Yeah, it's more of a bright,
going-
cheery, medieval type world. But the one scenes that I wrote, it was too much, I guess. So I had to tone that down a lot, and now it's like I'm probably cutting it all out entirely. But I might write like a short story, make it into a short story, and it'll be like I'll send it to Anita to get her approval.
It could be good for maybe an anthology or something, or just a short story, right?
Yeah. Well, I've got a number of different kind of like short vignettes that I just wrote, just kind of to, in my own mind, put the backstory on people.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's the backstory for some of the characters. And I might, I don't have any plans to do it, but I might get those edited and put them into, like another book of short stories or an unfinished tales if I'm going to follow Tolkien, but.
And why not?
Yeah,
right?
Not likely. No, probably nobody will ever see them except me and my friend. But it's
But they're good to have in mind for character development. So
yeah, and it lets me go back to something and when you write something and write this story, I think it really cements it in your mind what their backstory is and what kind of who they are, and then you can remain consistent to that a lot easier in the story. One of my, I almost use this as a pet peeve, is that this is more television though, or long series, when they have, they have a cast and they have a new storyline, but they don't want to change cast members. So you have cast members who completely change personalities. because they need the,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So again, I should have used that one instead of the damsel in distress, I guess.
Well, there for anybody watching this, future topic idea, right?
Oh yeah.
So it's a good one. Character is king. Like I always say, I'll go out of my way to accommodate a character if they're telling me that that's something that they wouldn't do. Even if the plot requires it, and like I've hinged everything on this point, it's like, all right, well, how do we get you here somewhere close to this so that, because, as a reader, you can totally tell when a character's done dirty like that.
Yeah.
Where it's just in service of the plot. And we read really to get into the minds of these different characters. I mean, the plot is interesting and good, and things need to happen so that they can have things to overcome. But or just things for our amusement, perhaps. Depends on what kind of stories you like to read. So,
and I think that's the difference between a plot-driven story and a character-driven story. I mean, a plot-driven story, you'll play fast and loose with the characters, but in a character-driven story, you've got to be, true to the characters. Otherwise, it just starts to fall apart.
Yeah. So do you make allowances like that for your characters? Like as you're going through? No, you're like, you have to do this. The exact opposite.
No, I mean, I try to keep my characters consistent in who they are. And, so like, for example, I have one character who's a rogue, I'll say. But he's really good at, getting in and out of places that people don't want him. And, he's really good at killing people. But he kind of has a code of ethics that he doesn't just do that, willy-nilly. He doesn't just rob people for the sake of robbing people. And he doesn't kill people just for the sake of killing people. In that way, he's very ethical from that standpoint. And so there's just things that he, he'll be really
that
good
before you go into the outlining, right?
Yeah.
And so you keep that in mind.
Yep. And so I don't put him in situations where that's the case. And then, there's, I don't want to give away books, but the third book, he actually plays a pretty pivotal role. Where up to that point, he's not a minor character, but he's not, one of the lead characters, and he becomes more important in the third book.
Yes. Well, that's excellent. It's something to look forward to, and it keeps you driving to see maybe how he fits into this next one. And then the third one, that's it, right? You said it was a trilogy.
Yep. And then I'm done with this series. I might do more books in this world. And I've
once you've done the world building.
Yeah. And, this world is there's a lot going to change in the third book, or it's not going to change, but the reader's going to be aware that, the situation or the circumstances exist, that there could be a huge upheaval. And so I've been kind of in the back of my mind thinking of something like set 100 years in the future, and different stuff. So we'll see if that plays out, but I got to finish these first 3 books.
Yes.
That's my goal.
And the 100 years in the future makes me think of the AI topic and what writing is going to look like in that 100 years. Have you ever used it for a scene? Because I think just the other day I actually used it. I went in and just put in some fundamentals of what I thought was in this bedroom, or who owned this bedroom, and just let it flesh out what else might be in there. So that saved me a lot of time, from doing research. And what I normally would have done is go, look for cluttered bedrooms and be like, oh, that's there. Oh, what could this say about this character, and how might that thing come in handy later? Because I'm exactly the opposite. Like I have an outline, but I let the characters run amok within it.
Hmm.
And hopefully they listen to me and come back in interesting ways. They have so far anyway. But it was interesting. Not that I would use it to write an entire book because it was very stilted, like you guys talked about. But the usefulness of it in terms of just saving some time in that research that I might otherwise have, gone down who knows how many rabbit holes. So what are
Yeah.
your thoughts on using it for something like that?
I've never touched it. And I don't want to say I'm a technophobe, but I am not really one to use a lot of technology for stuff. I mean, I Google search stuff when I'm researching things. I do that a lot.
Do you do it when you're in the middle of writing?
I
Or do you have like, bracket? I need to research this and then move on.
No, I just stop writing and I go online and I'll spend an hour, 2 hour, whatever, looking and researching. And, the problem with, research, you go to Wikipedia, right? And you can get some information, but that's not necessarily the whole story. And it's not
Probably not. Yeah.
entirely true. And I base a lot of my races on different nationalities. And so having to kind of go look and get some of the traditions of the different countries is basically, that's the main thing I do research on.
So the details are important, but they just need to be interspersed in there rather than a giant info dump, like you were saying.
Yeah,
right?
and
you don't need to know about the tiles and everything on them for 10 minutes. But unless the character maybe has been drugged and is coming to, right? And that's all that they can focus on, right?
Mhm.
So it does depend.
Oh, absolutely. And knowing the history and how some tradition or something came about, I mean, that's interesting. You can write and add that into the, the backstory of the people and the backstory of the book, or the characters. And so again, that's generally what I do. But as far as AI goes, I've never touched it. And I probably won't. I am the most even like with my phone, my friends
Technophobe?
all complain because I'm like, don't text me. I have a phone so you can call me.
Oh, that's
and
harsh.
they text me and they're like, I sent you a message on Facebook. And I'm like, well, I'm on Facebook like, in the evenings mainly because that's when I'm not working.
Mhm.
And, they all have it on their phone. They sit there on their phones on Facebook and Instagram and all this stuff. And I check it, a couple times a day. Same with email and everything else. I just,
Yeah, you have to compartmentalize it or it can drive you crazy.
well, and I'm just not into all the technology. I'm a face-to-face kind of person. So,
Mhm.
if I want to
Well,
talk to
obviously
somebody-
you're here though, so
yeah. Well, this is kind of face-to-face. After COVID, this is
yeah, like you guys were saying, it kind of forced us, or maybe that was the last interview with Angela. I know they all literally ran together for
run
me.
together. Yeah, I know how that is.
Just that this brought that out of us as a society, really. Like it ushered us more into this technological era that we might have been flitting on. So
Yeah,
all right, Vanessa has to
changed.
run. Thanks for the show. It was fun. Bye, Vanessa. Thanks
Bye,
for coming
Vanessa.
in.
It changed how we do stuff. That's for sure.
Yes. So I wanted to ask you what you thought about the green room. Do you think that David's decision was fair, or are you going to be one of his many nemesis that are
No,
blooming out there?
I think Angela had some wonderful topics, and it's hard to argue when we both agree on pretty much all 6 of the pet peeves. So
Well, yeah, you guys are so very nice to each other. I wonder if we'll ever have a real cutthroat. green room.
Well, only if somebody says, like, I hate male characters who are wannabe knights, and then I might have.
I want all men to be alpha holes.
Yeah, then then the knives will come out. I used to have a bunch of little miniature swords, and I was gonna bring, but I can't find them.
The little miniature swords.
I was gonna try to intimidate her with them.
Through the internet.
Correct.
Right.
Be like stabbing at the camera, just trying to distract her while she's talking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you brought up the whole damsel thing, which, I don't know if there is an equivalent word for male, like a male damsel, or if it's just that we take that word and associate it with females. But
yeah, and that's part of the problem too.
Yeah, and I have. Y'all might get your wish. Karina is on next, and she's ultra competitive. Okay, well, we will see. That will be interesting. I think at the heart of the damsel in distress thing might be the character not seeming like they have agency in their saving. In the story ending, even though they're the main character. So you think about like Sleeping Beauty falls asleep and she has no agency. She doesn't go fight the dragon. This prince does, right? And so it's like, oh, so frustrating. But if you look at it through the lens of Sleeping Beauty, like her beauty, while it may seem superficial, but her beauty is the thing that drew the prince to fight for her, right? Mm-hmm. Her legend, her living for that 1,000 years. And before that, we do get to see a spirited young woman. So at least in the Disney version, I'm not like a Sleeping Beauty aficionado, but just even taking that micro snippet, I think I kind of have fun being devil's advocate with this sometimes and being like, well, what else does the damsel do for the story? Oftentimes she adds comedic relief too.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You think about Indiana Jones, right? And the Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
So and that character was actually fairly useful at several points in time. I don't know about you, but one of the most horrific memories of watching anything as a child for me was when she stuck her arm in that spoilers for Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. But when she stuck her arm in there to twist the little knob, and it was just filled with all manner of creepy crawly things. Like, who didn't squirm? And even though she's kind of held up as this rag doll that he takes through the movie, I'm like, did you not see stuff like that? So I have fun sort of putting this trope on its head sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And that, that's for every trope, if you can turn it on its head. Any trope that makes it more interesting. It's just the whole idea though that I have is, Sleeping Beauty is a bad example because she is a damsel in distress, but I'm thinking more of first of all, it's usually like one of the women warriors, female warriors, or it's a princess and she's just totally helpless, and and they almost always get captured.
There needs to be a merging of the two, which I have to say David does very well in his series, The Empire of Ruin. He has two strong female characters who are also very feminine, right? So that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, I if you're gonna write, not that nobody can be captured but if you're gonna write a character, make it believable of how they get captured. Or I again, another show I saw, I can't remember what it was, but it's like you've got this super powerful supposed woman, and she just surrenders because it's going to save everybody's life. And it's like, yeah, that never works out. So then after she surrenders, all these people have to go rescue her. And of course, a bunch of people die that she was trying to save in the first place. And so again, it can be done and not done poorly. But I would just like to see, if you're going to have, female characters, make them female characters, make them just
make them characters, and their gender is just a thing. That's what I think. So I agree with you there. So,
and quit using them as plot devices.
So
they deserve so much more than that.
Yes. What I really want to know is how you feel about garden gnomes. This is the pressing question that I have.
Well, my mother-in-law loves garden gnomes, so we have a gnome house in our yard. And I'm not a huge fan of them. Unless I wanted to buy her the ones that had the little soldier guys that had the guns, and then the little stripper ones. And she put the kibosh on that. And then I might not have minded the garden gnomes, but just having a bunch of little creepy.
Oh, so you find them creepy?
They're just silly. So
I
will tell you a fun story. I went to a winter carnival event, and there's a girl I used to go to these winter carnival events with because my wife has no interest in it. But we went into this place and it had gnomes all over the place. And she's like, "Can you turn that gnome there? It's looking at me." And I'm like, so I'm like, okay. And I turned it. Well, then I said, I got to use the restroom. And so I got up and I went and I turned every single gnome in the place to face her. And then we got our coffee and she came back with her coffee and I turned the gnome back to look at her. And she sat down and she looks at it. She goes, "Did you turn that gnome back?" And I go, "No." And she goes, "It's looking at me again." And then she's like looking around and she just totally creeped her out. I had a good laugh.
That is hilarious.
That is my only
that's a great gnome story
about garden gnomes.
That is a great gnome story. I like that. I was looking at my notes to see if there's anything else, and I have up here, what is story bullying? And that was a question I think David had for me. It goes to when you hurt your story, when your editing is so poor that it ends up hurting your story, right? Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. Story bullying.
As I said, when I read a book and it's just
you get it.
Readable. What's that?
Oh, I was responding to Angela. She likes garden gnomes. Sorry. Oh.
She would.
She would. I have a garden gnome in my story, actually, and you might actually like it. It meets a terrible fate, shall we say.
Is it an animated garden gnome or is it just
a garden gnome? Maybe. I don't know. You'll have to read to find out.
I will do that.
So I think we are getting on the end here. So why don't you tell people where they can find you? And you already told a bit about the project that you're just working on. So,
yep.
Where can people find you? Where do you hang out when you are online?
Usually Facebook when I am online. Otherwise, Wyvernzary. You can email author@wyvernzary.com, and I respond. I check my email again a couple times a day. I always respond to people. My book. You can see my book.
Ooh, that's a beautiful cover.
Yeah. I'll tell you the cover. Woman in France. did it, and we worked really hard. And my requirement or my thing to her was, is I want something that, you know, is a piece of art that
Yeah.
looks really good. And because I see a lot of book covers that, and not speaking
Dissing.
ill of other books or anything else, but you know, I see a lot of them that are like 2-color, and they're nice book covers, and they draw your attention. They do everything a book cover is supposed to be, which mine probably doesn't. I mean, I'm sure somebody professionally looked at it, they'd be like, yeah, well, this is wrong and this is wrong and this is wrong.
You
But
can always find somebody finding something wrong with everything.
yeah,
One of my
So,
favorite sayings is, you're still going to get criticized no matter what the fuck you do. So you might as well do what you want.
exactly.
You know?
I have that same philosophy.
It's so true.
Do what makes you happy, and don't.
There
you
will
know,
always be fault with it. Now, it doesn't mean
unless
that
it's
you don't
my
get an
life.
editor, right? It doesn't mean that you don't get an editor and try your best. But just understand
Well,
that once you're happy with it, that's what matters.
even the editors, I don't just blindly take everything they say.
Mm-hmm.
I read it and look at it. My one editor complains about my head hopping, but that's my style. I like to do a scene from one person's perspective and then do a scene from another person's perspective. And I, for me, I think it's good because, you know, nobody thinks they're evil, right?
Yeah.
Nobody thinks they're bad. And some people, sometimes they're not necessarily bad. Neither one is bad. They just have different goals.
Mhm.
And, you know, sometimes those collide. And I think that's interesting. And I think it's interesting from a storytelling point of view to kind of go back and forth. And also for big events to give it from different people's perspective and see how it affects not just the main character, but, you know, other people. And she was like, every time I did it, she's like, you can cut this, you can cut this. You don't need to tell this 3 times. It's like, well, I'm not telling the same story 3 times or the same scene 3 times, but I'm giving 3 different people's perspective on it.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you're right. It's the author's prerogative. You know, it's your piece of your soul. So you can either choose to take that advice or leave it.
Mm-hmm. And I try to take everything to heart and, you know, really act on it in one way or another. But there's a couple that I'm just like, that's my style.
I understand. There's some things you just got to fight for.
Yeah.
So. All right. Well, Daniel, thank you for being a contestant in the green room and for this lovely interview with me afterwards. No, it was skulking in the darkness. It's supposed to be a bad thing, right? We'll find our way.
Skulking in the darkness is good. We'll call it that.
How do you think that being on the green room has changed your life?
Well, I got to meet Angela and I got to meet you. So I have 2 more contacts in the indie world. 2 lovely young ladies that I can push stuff off of. No.
There you go.
Hopefully
Excellent.
both of you will read my book and give me some good feedback.
Okay. Well,
And,
I will pick it up.
If you message me your address, I will send you a copy.
Oh, all right. Well, we're connected on Facebook now, so
yes, we are.
I will do that. Thank you very much,
and
Daniel.
You're just in Wisconsin, right?
I am in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you guys get a lot of snow there?
No, not really. Not up where I am anyway. So I can't speak for the rest of the state. It's always a puzzle piece in terms of that. There'll be people just like a half hour from here will get a ton of it. So where are you at?
I'm northwest of Minneapolis.
Okay, so not too far. Yeah.
No, yeah, I'm pretty close to Wisconsin. I say I can drive to the other side of Wisconsin in about 5 hours. So
what was that? The green room is the answer to what? All of Angela's prayers and all the world
issues.
So very true. All right. Well, thank you, Daniel. And Let's see.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I would just like to say thank you to everybody for welcoming me for this first interview segment. And it is always time to go indie now.